No video, IX.br and CGI.br.
Seus dados particulares fossem divulgados sem autorização, se você tivesse sua navegação filtrada por causa de interesses comerciais. A liberdade de expressão, a privacidade e a neutralidade da rede são fundamentais para a internet. E esses são apenas alguns dos 10 princípios formulados pelo Comitê Gestor da Internet no Brasil. O CGI.br promove há mais de 20 anos a internet no país. Graças a ele, você tem constante inovação, segurança e diretrizes para o desenvolvimento da internet. Isso tudo é feito de forma colaborativa, transparente e democrática. O comitê é formado por representantes de todos os setores da sociedade. Assim, as decisões são tomadas por meio do diálogo, com a participação de todos os membros até que um consenso seja alcançado. Por esses e outros fatores, o modelo brasileiro de governança se tornou referência no mundo todo. CGI.br, por uma internet cada vez melhor no Brasil.
Gostaria de agradecer aos nossos
I also would like to thank our sponsors, Vital and Seaborn, for supporting our Congress. Let me tell you a little bit more about today's event. Also, those who have joined us remotely will be aware of today's activities. We are going to have some technical activities and some other panels. To start with, we are going to update our IX.br, CGI, Internet exchanges. Following that, we are going to have a data center panel, which will be moderated by Julio Sirotto. Then we are going to have another panel about DRT, about the measurement IX.br systems, and lunch. Lunch will be served here at our premises, and you are all invited to have lunch with us. Those who are late today, please let them know about lunch. In the afternoon, we are going to resume with a Molons and Basilios panel that will talk about fair share, internet rates, and to close the day, we are going to have our beer and gear session, which is our beer round. So that is going to be a cocktail party that where you are all introduced. The beer and gear session will take place exactly where the coffee break has been served. You are all invited to stay for the happy hour so we can chat. We can also talk to our sponsors. With no further ado, I would like to invite Milton Kashiakura, who is our project director for IX.br. He will officially open today's session. Welcome, Kashiwakura. Everyone, I'd like to start by thanking each and every one of you for being here today, and also to let you know why we have decided to organize this event at Fortaleza. Fortaleza IX dates back from 2008. At that time, despite the sub-cables were not able to reach this site, Fortaleza was one of our land stations. But that was about all. Data would come over here, but then would be directed to Rio de Janeiro or São Paulo hub. If a submarine cable is able to reach Fortaleza, which is the closest hub to the US, and a very large traffic volume would be directed to South America instead of North America. And we know that somehow fibers should be available and opened at our territory. Our goal was to convince governmental authorities to place some assets to the internet so the cable somehow would be able to go through Fortaleza and finally be opened. Finally, back in 2010, the cable fiber was open and some submarine companies, they were directing part of their internet exchange traffic to Fortaleza. But that started slowly, and we were thinking if more people would also direct their traffic to Fortaleza Hub, some other large companies should also participate at our internet exchange. With that in mind, we designed a project which was presented to the government of Ceará State, where Fortaleza is the capital. Our idea was to have more presence in the city of Fortaleza. So we started such a project many years ago, and finally last year that became a reality, and that is very positive to our sector. However, we had to devote many years of hard work to turn Fortaleza our second internet exchange with a very large number of participants and traffic volume. With that, we decided then to carry out this event here in Fortaleza city to allow a better relationship among companies. A traffic internet exchange, it is a way to relate to other companies, to exchange experience, to exchange traffic, to have a very open discussion, and that is key. We started our São Paulo IX Forum, just invited companies for a happy hour on a Friday evening. That's why we keep inviting our participants to close the day with this big round of beer, with our beer and gear session. Those who might not be able to participate throughout the day and just, watch a few sessions, at least come and join us at the end of the day. Our happy hour will be really fun and a great opportunity to enhance our network and face-to-face relationships so we can really, leverage our sector in a very nice way throughout a nice partnership and relationship. Our objective is to replicate events like that. We started last year. This is our second year. Initially, this event was supposed to take place in the first half, but here we are, and we keep a promise that our internet exchange forums will be replicated year after year. Initially, we have just one-day event, but we hope in the future editions that we are going to have more days and that this forum will become as active as the ones that we use to organize in São Paulo. Companies are all here together, and they all aim to deliver a service of good quality. As you might know, we have a number of projects, including internet use, and also to raise the bar for internet service quality in Brazil. Our internet quality is comparable to developed countries. And how about some other regions in the country, southeast, northeast, the meridional region, we still have to improve our internet quality. But thanks to Fortaleza Hub, I'm sure we are going to be able to improve Brazilian internet quality of service. And Fortaleza is a very important hub to the northern, northeast, and also the center region of the country. We also count on some international speakers that are very important to the African continent, European continent, and of course to the United States of America. So over here in Fortaleza, we find this hub of great importance. That's why we decided then to organize the forum over here to straighten our binds, and I hope you all have a very fruitful event. Our agenda is very rich, wonderful topics, and I'll be around to give you any sort of support you might need throughout the day, and I wish you all a very pleasant and fruitful day. Now I'd like to hand over to Antonio Moreiras.
Nós vamos prosseguir com alguns updates dos projetos do
Hello,
INC.br, das
everyone.
iniciativas do
I
INC.br.
have some
Então, vem o Gil
updates
Sirota, depois eu vou
for
falar
our
do OpenCDN,
activities.
depois o
Our
Gilberto
next
Sorello
speaker
falando do
will be
MySeg.
Sirota,
Pode ir,
then
Gil.
Gilberto Zorello that will talk about MySeg. Hello, everyone. Good morning to our participants on site and remotely. If you don't mind, I'd like to switch my microphone, please. Handheld is much better. I will briefly introduce today's activities. If you could please show my presentation. My goal is to keep sharing Fortaleza's background and how this hub has been developed. As Milton has said, we had last year our first IX.br forum. And at that time, I showed some slides, and this was one of the slides that can really, put us into a timeline perspective and what to expect from a near future.
O primeiro movimento importante aqui para Fortaleza foi a chegada da Netflix aqui.
Netflix was a great achievement for Fortaleza as a content provider that took place in February 2017, when after Netflix, we also have Facebook, which became available in December 19, with a Facebook upgrade in the following year, July 2020.
Então, aí a gente vê a ideia do slide realmente é mostrar crescimento, tá?
In this timeline, you can see a growth. We started in 2017.
Aí, no ano passado, em abril de 2023,
in April 2023,
muito menos significativo.
The details, they are no longer as meaningful in relation to the traffic that we had 1 year before that.
Foi na época em que a gente teve uma ampliação da capacidade de caches do
Last year, we
Google,
were able to increase our Google cache capacity in Fortaleza, where that cache layer had just been activated right after our Internet Exchange Forum.
Tá? Então, novamente, aí a gente volta e eu mostro onde que está essa ampliação e como isso
You can
cresceu, né, de
see
ano
the
passado para
upgrade
cá.
and how much
Aí,
greater
o
that
que
became.
a gente tem observado, né, que Fortaleza chegou aos 5 terabits por
Fortaleza
segundo
has
de
reached
tráfego
5 terabytes
e a
per
gente tem notado
second
aí nos
of
últimos
traffic,
meses
and
uma
in the past
diminuição do
months we
tráfego.
see a decrease
Aí
in the traffic volume.
comecei a analisar alguns dados, começar a ver, pô, o que será que está acontecendo?
We want to
Efetivamente,
know
assim,
what
eu não
was the
tenho
reason for such
dado
a
preciso para dizer, não, o problema
downgrade.
é esse ou
There
aquele.
is
Eu
not
tenho
a
uma
specific
ideia do que possa
answer
ser,
for the
tá?
reason why
Eu
we
acho que
have
é falta
seen
de
such
conteúdo.
a decrease
Por
in
quê?
the traffic
Eu
volume.
acho que
And I guess the
quem está
reason is
produzindo
lack
conteúdo
of
aqui em
content.
Fortaleza, de uma certa
Who
forma,
has
acho que
been
subestimou a
approving
demanda.
content in
Né?
Fortaleza
Então, a
somehow
procura
has
por conteúdo, a
probably
procura pelos
underestimated
dados
the
aqui em
level of
Fortaleza,
demand.
seja através do
Search for
IX.br,
Fortaleza
ou
data
através de
throughout
conexões diretas,
IX.br or
né?
maybe
Através de
throughout
PNIs, através
direct
de
connections,
conexões nos
and
data
by that
centers,
I
onde
mean
esses conteúdos
direct
estão
connections to
presentes,
data
eu
center
acho que
where
está sendo muito
content is
maior, né,
available.
o
I
avanço dessa
believe
demanda do que a
the
capacidade de
increase of the
expansão das
demand
empresas.
is being greater
Então,
than
hoje, a gente
companies'
observa no horário de
capacity
pico
to
aqui
expand their activities.
em
Peak
Fortaleza, que a
hours
gente
in
calcula que está
Fortaleza,
focando, né,
usually
usando esse
we
projeto
see
como
a decrease in the
de
volume of
capacidade,
traffic,
talvez o
even though
número
that is a peak
das
hour,
conexões
probably
diretas.
because
Então,
there is
é,
a greater demand
eu
for
imagino o
direct
seguinte,
connections instead of
25
connections
de
which are
ampliações.
carried out
Então, em
throughout
breve, eu
our
acho que aqui vai
IX.br.
voltar a subir.
I hope that very
Os
soon we
novos
are going to see an
terminais de
increase
rodagem, a gente sabe
in
que
the number of
existe
connections. And talking to providers, we see some signs that there will
esse
be
alta que
an
não foi
increase
pretendida.
in the level of
Estamos vendo
demand
através do data
for
center, que é
traffic
observável
access in
dentro da plataforma
Fortaleza.
para a
And
gente
I
saber do
that's why I'm
conteúdo do
very
data center,
interested
se isso
in the data
é falta
center
de
panel,
visão,
where we'll
ou
have a
se
chance to
é
ask them if they believe that this is a fact or if that will be a reality
os
in our
novos
sector
participantes,
or
né, eles
not.
continuam crescendo aqui em Fortaleza, né?
Number
Esse
of participants are keep growing in Fortaleza.
linhas em azul são os
The blue bars, they
participantes
represent a number of participants,
e já é o
and
tráfego.
the orange line represents the
Já está
traffic.
800
In
participantes.
Fortaleza, we have around 800 participants already.
Eu fiz também uma comparação aí do que a gente tinha de conteúdo.
This is a comparison table,
Que a gente tem hoje.
what we had in terms of content last year and this year.
Eu não vou lembrar, não sei se algum dos outros conteúdos teve um aumento aí de 20
Some of the contents, they had an increase of 100 or maybe 200 gigabytes. And now we have Amazon and Quilt, which have joined Fortaleza's hub. So these are the only two new participants that we got. Nowadays, Fortaleza has a volume which is much greater in terms of content. We have more content than Rio de Janeiro's hub. Here you can see the year of activation and the peering numbers. Here are some figures addressing Internet Exchange.br Fortaleza. As to number of portals, we have 13 ports of 1 gigabyte. All of them, they are addressed for DNS service types, statistics, data collection. We have 202 10 giga portals and 227 portals of 100 gigas. So we have more 100 giga portals than 2 gigabytes, which is a trend.
começando dos médios PTTs que a gente
one of
opera.
the big, starting with the average with those that we operate. As to
Via
connections
SIX, né, que são
via
as conexões que são
sticks,
compartilhadas por
shared
empresas que
connections
transportam múltiplos
with
AS.
companies
A gente tem
that transport
685
multiple AS. We have
conexões desse tipo.
685 connections like
Então,
this.
a gente
So
tem
we have
805 ASNs conectados, né? Então, a gente tem uma
805
participação
ASNs
significativa aí
connected. So we
de
have a
conexões
significant number of
via
connections via six.
Dentro da rede aqui
Within
de
the
Fortaleza, a gente tem também
Fortaleza network,
284
we have
registros bilaterais configurados
284
para fazer a ligação direta entre dois
configured bilateral
ASNs
VLANs to
diferentes dentro
connect
da
two
matriz de
different
computação
ASNs
do
within
IX.br.
the IX.br,
Pegar esses
within the
números, né,
matrix of
principalmente a questão das
computers.
portas, a gente
So
vê
we
hoje que a
have, in
gente tem
terms of the ports,
capacidade
we
instalada
have
disponível para os
installed capacity
participantes
available for
de
participants of
24,7
about
terabits por segundo.
24.7 terabits per second.
Essa
This
topologia, né, que a gente tem
topology that we have
aqui em Fortaleza, onde a gente indica
here in Fortaleza, it shows the participating data centers. Just to highlight to you, we made a change in this picture and we highlighted the main core picks. One is Leticia, the other one is at Vital data center. We created two picks, HEC and the Vital or Vital. So they are independent. So we have equipment that play the part of core in those data centers. So the equipment receive connections of participants. So in São Paulo, we had that for a long time. Now we made this change to reflect this at a level charts that you can follow.
Bom, agora vamos para a parte mais, para mim, a mais importante aqui que queria passar para vocês.
It's the most important part I wanted to share with you. We actually, well, fortunately, we have seen a growth of IX.br in various places in Brazil. So what happens? We have 6 locations where we need to expand the whole block that we are operating in PGT. The number of routers is growing, and we no longer have IPv4 address to set up the network. So we in Fortaleza, we should start this process this month. So we made a request to the IX.br people that have submitted the request for LACNIC, and we have already received 2 blocks /21 to make these expansions. So those blocks come from a reserve that exists for the critical internet structure or infrastructures. How did you get IPv4? So we have this critical infrastructure. We have to justify the reason very clearly as to how we need to make those expansions. This process of changing the IP block, well, it's very important to have participants doing what we request in a fast way so that the process has a beginning and an ending that are fast. We're going to prepare the documentation. We're going to make it on the IX website available. We're going to communicate to the ASs in the region. I've talked to Moreira. We're going to have a live session, some space for clarifications or support. We're going to ask support from Anderson, our professors, to support us, to explain and clarify questions. So since we have to change the block, we're going to create 2 new route servers in the location with the new addresses, and participants will have to put two IPs, two different addresses at the port of the router. And we're going to disable one of the current servers so that we have an alarm and it signals to participants that they don't have redundancy of route service that they need to make a connection to the new network. And the idea, within the timeline, we intend to close this by late September. We're going to remove the old block. Why? The block that is in use in Fortaleza is going to go to another location. So this process will involve Rio de Janeiro, Porto Alegre, Curitiba, Brasília, and Recife, each one at a different time. So we don't have musical chairs, but actually it's the IP musical or musical IP. So we're going to have /20 in use are going to be distributed, and Fortaleza will receive the /21. Once again, I ask you to contribute to this process. Any questions you have, I'll be here throughout the day, and we'll have more time at the end of the event for questions. So this is it. Let me call Moreiras to talk about OpenCDN.
E se você olhou para o slide do Júlio e viu lá, está indo de barra 22 para barra 21.
We have Julio going from 22 to 21. People ask, why are you reducing that? Well, we have courses online. Well, jokes aside, so if we could have my presentation, then I can give you an update.
Isso. Bom, lembrando a vocês o que é
I'd like to remind you what is OpenCDN. To remind you, CDNs are those content distribution networks. Julio mentioned many of them as present here in Fortaleza. Many companies responsible for content services have their own networks. Others hire companies that are specialized in making distribution of content, Command, CloudFlood, other examples. And we see PTTs as ideal points to interconnect CDNs and other networks, access providers, and other network CDNs participate. As Julio shown a while ago, he put the name of many better, several networks that offer contents, and the networks take part of the larger PTTs. In Fortaleza, we have many, as there are many in São Paulo, even more than here in Rio de Janeiro, and more or less the same number as here, the other PTTs. CDNs are not, many of them are not directly connected. Sometimes it's possible to obtain content from such CDNs rather than other PTTs, but another provider that is connected has their cache or have a direct peering with them or has some kind of privileged connection with them, and you can make an agreement with them, a commercial agreement, high internet traffic, restricted traffic, any kind of agreement, and you have access to that content. So it is still possible, even if there's no CDN in other PTTs, you have access of contents of some CDNs. Well, here I have a table that you cannot see all the details. We can download the presentation at the events website and have a look. This is the information you have of participants of IX.br. If you look at participants, we just organized that into a table just to give you an idea of the CDN present at IX. The three first are São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, and Fortaleza. The list is basically totally populated. So São Paulo, there are many. not all of them. So it's not an exhausting table. So those that we have identified as content providers. São Paulo has all of them. Fortaleza, Rio de Janeiro have many, almost all of them. Porto Alegre, Curitiba, bit less, Brasilia, and then so on and so forth. The other PTTs practically don't have any. And then we have the initiative of the OpenCDN. OpenCDN tries to create conditions and attractiveness so that the CDNs can be installed in other PTTs in Brazil. So what is CDN? No. OpenCDN, is it a CDN? No, although the name doesn't help much. People get mixed up. It's an initiative of sharing infrastructure. It provides hosting for CDNs, band for the update of caches, and to participants on the PTT, the updates of contents of the main CDNs. It provides access to the contents of the main CDNs, and all of that with shared cost to make it cheaper for everyone. Our view is that all PTTs of IX.br, of the internet exchanges in Brazil, should have the main CDNs installed in them. Our view is that PTTs are excellent points for this distribution. And we want to encourage that. Today, we don't have open CDNs in all PTTs, some because they are huge, they have their own attractiveness, and others because we haven't reached them yet. Well, it is an idea, it's a project, an initiative, and we're still, although we are operating in many cities, CDNs have to be convinced, and the providers as well, that this is a good idea, that this sharing is good for everyone. This is what we feel, that sharing is good for everyone, rather than the CDN having thousands and thousands of caches spread throughout Brazil. You can place them in 36 hubs or points. When we have IX.br of Porto Velho that will shortly be active, right, Julio? We put these CDNs and the distribution points at the PTTs, and we're going to serve quite well the grid of providers in Brazil. Brazil is a continental-sized country, so the concept of OpenCDN is having the caches of CDN, the same caches that are used to put in the same provider, putting in an autonomous system 61580. In the regional PTTs, those caches are fed via traffic or other larger PTTs, and they feed the providers connected to that regional PTT. So OpenCDN in Salvador would feed people in Salvador. So where do we have OpenCDN today? In Salvador, Manaus, Brasília, Recife, and Belo Horizonte. Each one of those places has a set of different CDNs. When we put this initiative in a new PTT, we tell the CDNs, well, guys, we're placing OpenCDN somewhere. Would you like to put cache there? Do you agree to join the initiative? So we talk to CDN. They usually ask, who are the providers that are going to take place? Who are the providers in this location? So, and then we share the list of providers with them, and they see whether they find it worthwhile or not. And for this to work, providers for each location have to participate of the PTTs in those locations. It's important to take part in large PTTs like São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Fortaleza, but also it's important to take part of the closest PTT to ensure an interconnection that is more efficient to other providers in the region and to strengthen the whole internet ecosystem in the region and attracting also people from content. What are the news here for 2024? Something quite important, which is the implementation of Meta in Facebook, announced. Servers are about to be enabled. To us, it's something really cool. It's the first location that Facebook agreed to participate, and we intend to start this year in Goiânia remotely. Well, the same infrastructure that serves Brasilia will serve Goiânia. We're ready to connect new users. It will be open on our website shortly, and we intend to start the locations of Belém and Cuiabá in 2024. If you are a provider of a data center or traffic provider, and if you want to be our provider, or even better, want to be our partner in many of those locations, we make agreements, we have partnerships, we depend rather than depend. We count on the partnership and willingness of companies in the region that see the importance of this, the importance of strengthening the whole internet ecosystem. And they support us, providing resources, sometimes data center capacity, transport capacity to São Paulo to turn the project feasible, sometimes for free or even cheaper for participants. As I said before, the initial idea of the project is sharing costs. So initially, we hire data centers, hosting, IP, transport to São Paulo, and these costs are shared with providers. But when we have partners that are able to provide or make some kind of swap agreement for those resources, costs are lower to be shared and projects become more feasible and start growing faster. So we are open around Brazil, and this is what I wanted to share with you. I'd like to invite Gilberto Zorello to give you an update on the I plus SEC.
Apresentação. Ok. Pessoal, bom dia. Sou Gilberto Zorello.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gilberto Zorello from IX.br. I am a project coordinator, and one of the projects which I look after is a safer net. My goal here today is to update the SaferNet program. I was here last year. However, we have some new information to share. The program, though, aims to work closer to the technical community, disclosing the best safety measures. So I'm going to address some of the amplifiers, notifiers, also manners, kindness, and top for the standard tests. The top is a test tool which helps us to verify KIDAS. The program helps to reduce DDoS attacks, to improve router security, to reduce vulnerabilities due to setup failures, to communicate best practices in security, and also to increase the security culture. Our attempt is to develop, to help companies to develop projects in their companies, and anytime that they have to develop a new tool or equipment, security should come at first. At IX.br, we have a number of departments such as SET.br, responsible for security issues, where they have a notification project, troubleshooting. They are always willing to help to improve security incidents. We also support the resolution of several problems, including providers meeting, where together we evaluate best safety practices. We also have educational material which is available at our website. They work as tutorials that are of great help for those who follow our online programs. Lots of novelty. We also have a number of workshops online and on site. We also want to enhance our safety culture. IXPs and some other filters which are implemented, and all of that aims to enhance internet and to allow a better internet to our users. So our goal is to step out of a troubleshooting scenario and to have it improved to help and support our community. Cert.br notifies around 19 services nowadays, where we, in the first row there, ASN, DNS, they are all issues addressed by CERT. Down here, we see a timeline month after month and a number of other services which also have to be notified. This is just an example of one of the reports that I developed together with the ASNs anytime that we have a bilateral meeting where we survey the number of each operator has been responsible for a number of ASNs. And with that overview, we can understand the number of notifications that are being submitted by cert.br monthly. Two of those services, they were notified, SLP and Riper version 1. They are now notified. Here you can see the total number of notifications submitted by CERT. In the very beginning of the program, we had around 150,000 notifications which were submitted, including notified IPs. Today, we have around 165,000 of notified IPs. Last year, we were above 220,000, but now we see a drop. It's going down slowly, which collaborates to a better scenario for a reduction of DOS attacks. We see a diversification of services in Brazil. ISPs, they are highly addressed mainly for large servers, large carriers. DNS as well. SNMP and DNS, both, they are very important. DNS is a type of configuration which should be done in such a way that would not be visible to the web, but especially in the ISPs, DNSs, they became recursive and opened. How about manners? Mutually agreed norms for routing security. They count on 4 best security practices. And that is an idea recommended by Internet Society back in 2014-15, and IX.br is disseminating manners in Brazil.
O MES, então, ele trata da
Manners
questão, principalmente da questão do
addresses
o BGP,
BGP. BGP is not safe, so they work on BGP filters, anti-spoofing filters, which are not widely implemented in Brazil, unfortunately. We hope we will be able to encourage the anti-spoofing filters. They are core to reduce DDoS attacks in Brazil. So please, you have to deploy and implement anti-spoofing filters to guarantee that packages that are leaving your network, they are from your own network and not others. Otherwise, there will be attackers using your network to attack others. You don't want to offer your network free of charge to an attacker or an offender to attack somebody else's network, right? Contact points at Ruiz, IRR, peering DB, those IX points of traffic, they should not be individual. So when information has to be managed, they can be done right away. And also a router at the IRR and RPKI protocols. These are the four main practices that are addressed by manners. Our goal, as I said before, is to deploy BGP filters in such a way where you are not going to announce prefixes that should not be part of the net. Action number 2, anti-spoofing filter deployment. Action number 3 is to allow a contact point which can be managed by those who are dealing with that message. And there are two pieces of observations to be made here. First, according to the LACNIC policies, the IXP it's over the Ruiz, and that is revised every 3 or 4 months by a register process where a message is sent and the AS responsible person will have to interact to that registry and to inform that they are reading and managing the emails. Otherwise, on a second cycle, they will be on an alert pending system, which will be informed in the system. And as a third step, that access will be blocked. In case of a block, AES is no longer able to manage their IP blocks in the registration site. And if they keep doing it, they may be punished. According to the peering DB and IRR providers, they will lose their addresses that they are making, that they are using for their activities. And that is very serious. According to the LACNIC policy, this is also part of our acts for block pending. So people are trying to understand if they should remove or not an IP block. They have to get in touch with their peers in order to try to solve the issue. So please keep that as an alert. This is quite new in our policy and it has to be highlighted. In addition, CERT.br is sending a number of messages, and some of them they come with an error message. They are those messages which they come with that alert, they become a spam. That's why they are refused, or it might be also a configuration issue. So please be careful and pay attention to the messages that have to be submitted and received by each one of us. RPKI deployment is also key.
participantes do Manners tem no Brasil hoje?
So here you can have an idea about the number of manners participants in Brazil. We see a growth, but quite slowly. So our idea is to have more people adopting best practices for manners and become a participant. What are the advantages? You'll be able to use manners logo type, also to have best practices implemented, and you will be able to use the manners observatory tool if there was any offense to the global table, if anti-spoofing were being implemented together with the filters, IXPs in the MBD, and later on raw information and for IRR and RPKI in the corresponding external database. Kindness, on the other hand, which stands for knowledge sharing and instantaneous norms for DNS and naming security, they are best practices which are recommended by ICANN. You can register yourself at Kindness and to share your filter implementations, secure protocols, and you may become able to use kindness certification or kindness seal.
Infelizmente, basicamente, então, o Kairos ele trata da segurança dos servidores recursivos.
It's after the recursive and authoritative skills. Kindness requests DNSSEC implementation and validation, among some other orientations. And the goal is also to validate DNSSEC and routers, and they should be signed by DNSSEC as servers redundancy, not using the same server to host the authoritative and the recursive one. And last but not least, TOP is a tool which we have developed and made it available throughout this website, top.nic.br, allowing 3 types of tests. The green test is the one which approves the provider's website. The blue one, it tests emails, and the purple one tests connectivity. So you place the domain and you'll be able to test the website. If the website that is using that domain has the best security, best practices implemented, and the same apply to the email. And the third test is the one where you test links and connectivity. The third test, the purple one, will test the Wi-Fi connection, the level of Wi-Fi connection which has been offered here in this event. You are going to see IPv6 tests, if there is a DNSSEC validation or not. All of these 3 standards may be applied within your server. In addition, TOP has a seal that you may apply in your website. It's a way to be certified by TOP standards tests. Here we have a different TOP tests, IPv6, DNSSEC, and the user's network.
Aqui, resultados dos testes hoje, né? Do site.
Here we have we can have an idea about IPv6 adoption, HTTPS, which is that locker, and also DNSSEC. Here, IPv6, DNSSEC, and Start TLS.
Pessoal, é aquilo que eu comentei no começo, tá? Entre em contato com a gente pode fazer uma avaliação da sua rede.
So you may, get in touch with us and we'll be more than pleased to analyze your network. It's a very interesting task. You just share your AS, and then we can schedule a bilateral meeting with you, and we can go into details about each one of your net levels. If you have any additional questions, just, get in touch with me and I'll be available throughout the whole day. Let's keep talking. Thank you and have a good day.
We're going to move to one of the points that I believe is one of the most important of our event, which is a panel on data centers. I'd like to invite Julio Sirota, who's going to be the moderator, and he will invite the other panelists. Thank you, Moreiras. I'd like to invite for our chat João Walter from Ascenti and Rogério Piovesan from Vital and Guilherme Vieira from Tel Cables.
Bom, quando a gente estava preparando aqui
As we were preparing for our event, we brought up the possibility of talking about data center, but it's much more a starting point for us to discuss infrastructure. The development of the traffic exchange point, development of a given location from the standpoint of having contents, having carriers, etc. It depends very much on infrastructure. Well, data center is one of them. And along with the data center, we have other details that I'm going to try to bring up in this conversation with my colleagues. And I count on your participation as well. And so those who are watching us remotely, if you want to ask questions to our panel, we'll be answering them. Well, to start, I'd like to ask you to introduce yourselves briefly and tell us how you view the market of data centers in the Fortaleza region, and if you have any other things in other northeastern regions. Tell us a bit what you see is happening. Let's start with Rogério. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I see a full house, so this event is already a success. I'm Rogério Piovesan. I'm engineering and construction of data centers at Vital, and we see the Fortaleza market as a market that is major to us, not only to us, but for the whole of Brazil. As is being said, we know that this is today the second traffic exchange point, and it goes through Fortaleza. We have a great infrastructure of sub cables, and Vital has submarine cables reaching Praia do Futuro. So it actually is an environment that brings a digital infrastructure for Brazil, and that goes through Fortaleza. We are close to America, to Europe, and it's a connection hub for Brazil and for some countries in Latin America Peru, and other countries that also use this connection. And we are very optimistic regarding Fortaleza. We are investing heavily here. We have a 4 megawatt IT data center that is operating at full capacity, and we're going to start another data center of 10 TI and at Praia do Futuro, and we have demand of customers for this new data center. So actually, we look at Fortaleza as a promising future, not only for our company, but for Brazil. Actually, we believe it's already a hub and it's going to be even greater. Thank you, Rogério. Good morning. It's a pleasure and honor to be with you here today. I'm Guilherme Vieira, Commercial Director of Dell Cables Brazil, which is the RAW Cables Group. The view is that Fortaleza is the second largest connectivity hub in Brazil, and contest to us, it's a focus. It's our headquarters. We're much more present in Fortaleza than the rest of Brazil, and it's our main action focus. We have projects. It's quite, it's being disclosed. We have investment. We have a data center in operation, tier 3, and a project for another unit here in Fortaleza. Good morning, everyone. First, thank you for the opportunity. I think it's important for us to have this opportunity to discuss the Fortaleza market, the opportunities that we have here, and thinking a bit more. Well, speaking from the beginning, Ascenti has been here since 2015 in Fortaleza. One of the great data centers in the region is operated by Ascenti. Speaking of operations as a whole, we have 24 data centers in operation and 10 plus in being built and planned. It's quite significant. Since 2015, we have this idea that the Fortaleza market is differentiated. It has a potential. Actually, for this reason, Ascenti had the strategy of opening the enterprise market in this data center. We know that in the past, very hyperscale, great opportunities, but today we have great space for enterprise in this market. We believe in the potential for connectivity as well. We know Fortaleza is one of the most, so the best connected. We have the sub cables, the first quite of arrival of such cables. That's why we have the Ascenti network we have our network connected to the sub cables. This is a differentiated cable market, and we keep on investing. We have invested in places that could support possible expansions of our operations. Actually, currently, we have managed our capacity. We have capacity to support global companies and the Fortaleza market as well. This is a bit of what we have in mind. Hi. Let us start with questions that are a bit more of my interest of knowing from you and people from the audience as well. The goal is for us to try to bring up some issues, difficulties, etc. I'd like to know today that we know that there is a demand in operating data centers in Fortaleza. I'd like to know if you see difficulties regarding restrictions. Well, I have this difficulty in laying cables, pipelines, lack of power, lack of labor. What are the barriers? What are the challenging points that may impact the growth of your companies? Well, Julio, as I said, since we've been operating here since 2015, actually no kind of problem regarding energy. Said we know any data center company that starts operations anywhere they have licensing processes that is somewhat complex, but that is the case in any kind of market. When we look from the customer standpoint, we see some customers trying to join certain markets, etc. Well, there is somehow a certain difficulty of moves, license permits, etc. On our side, it's well established. Currently, we operate smoothly, and there are no issues. So the challenges or difficulties we had have been overcome. So no greater novelties on our side. For Ascenti customers, do they report any kind of difficulty, be it logistics, tax issues? Well, logistics is a problem for all, including us. I think the tax areas of companies or have to work hard to bring equipment. What is the penalty of your having this kind of difficulty? Sometimes you impact your operations. If you need something that is extremely fast and the tax part is not facilitated, that can be a challenge. So we have to plan greatly. If this is difficult to us, imagine a company, a foreign company that wants to start operations here. It's more complicated. So the people from the tax area have to overcome that issues. So if there is a willingness, appetite to be in the market, can be overcome with certain difficulties, but it is always overcome. Julio, speaking of difficulties, I think we have three components for data center operations. We have energy, public policies, and funding. We're talking about capital-intensive activities. When we talk about public policies, just recently we had the situation of the power plant. It's been overcome, but it came up. We know that if you have, well, the administration Ceará is strict, and there are some issues. The state government has been trying to facilitate and attract actions, and we see another component that is funding starting to happen. We see a project for the Northeast overall, not only here. We see funding to fund the data center of One Telecom, and I think with the 40 million, we see those things. Well, there are difficulties. Some are infrastructure, especially energy distribution. And now is a challenge to us. The utility company, I have no data. The infrastructure people are here at the event. Perhaps they have specific numbers of event we had on the power grid, and we're using high voltage grid, but we still face challenges. Well, when you look at the global scenario, the big picture, we are flowing quite well. Our data center is the first, is practically full capacity, and we have project investments that is being overcome. I also agree that we have this issue of power that is the problem that is not only in Fortaleza. It happens throughout Brazil because the data centers demand a lot of energy to cool our IT equipment of our customers. We require cooling infrastructure that is very robust to cope cooling the equipment. Well, with the new GPUs that are arriving, NVIDIA, they try to increase demand of cooling. So energy is actually a button to us. For you to get to energy at the point you need is a difficulty, not only in Fortaleza, actually. This is a point that we must pay attention to, and perhaps we should convince society on the importance of data centers, because people, I think, have no idea of what a data center is today. Today, everything we do here, the computers we see here on the desk are using data from data centers. So mobile using data from data center. So society doesn't know that. So we must convince society on the importance of that. So when you say the file is in the cloud, it's not in the cloud, it's in the data center, right? It's a physical structure that is there. And your file that is in the cloud is in that data center. So we could actually have this awareness raising in the area of energy distributors, generators, the government, the importance of the market that we have here to make it the connectivity of energy easier to the hubs or to the data centers, because this may foster the electric power industry. Data center will foster in the future this industry that is also giant. And the part of licensing and permits, it's always a bottleneck in our operations. We have an example. For example, let me mention a place, since it's for good, a city. Well, Porto Alegre, for you to get licensing for a data center, you get it in 1 month because they know it's a project that does not generate environmental liability, that does not generate vehicle traffic. So they provide very fast licensing, and this is something we should seek. Not that in Fortaleza it's bad, it's just normal as anywhere else in Brazil. But since Fortaleza is in this strategic location, we should play a role along with authorities so that they look at data centers with different lens to make permissions easier so that we have a fast track because they've understood what the business is, knowing that it does not generate environmental liability and are having faster licensing to implement these enterprises or projects that are of public utility. It's not Vital, it's not a Senti that is there that wants to make a data center for them. It's a benefit for society as a whole. So I believe energy and licensing or permits are 2 points we should focus in Fortaleza. Just insisting a bit. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to contribute to this debate, especially the part of power. Yesterday, we were visiting some data centers in Fortaleza, and we had Icaro with our remote hands that helps us in on the operations, and we commented on the railway that crosses the city that for many years during the construction of the railway to drive with the app for those that came from outside, it was terrible. And the whole city was under construction and it was difficult to move about. And then he said, well, the train is not operating at its best capacity due to lack of energy. And I said, well, come on. Is this lack of energy specifically for this operation? Or is there any kind of limitation or anything? So here in the Northeast, we see a lot, well, we see wind power plants. I'd like to know from you the hiring of this kind of energy is very clean, etc. As a counterpart, you generate this energy somewhere and you consume another type of energy here, but I don't know to what extent building data centers and operations at Praia do Futuro specifically has been planned or it's being adapted, or perhaps things are evolving there. We notice there is great growth, companies, we see more hotels and even people. Well, in the past, you would walk Praia do Futuro, you saw practically no one. Today, we see more people around. I'd like to know from you if there is any kind of viewpoint or perspective regarding electric power. Well, I think we actually see what's being mentioned here, that the state government has migrated the desalinization plant to another place. They've noticed the importance of this industry for Fortaleza, for the state, and for the city, both. But I think the penny has dropped in the sense that, well, we have an interesting business that may change the state, actually. And I believe we have to work to convince authorities of this, that they have a gold mine here, that what we have here today is a gold mine.
Investments in our data center, we're talking about what, 15 million BRLs, let alone sub cables, optical fiber structure. Therefore, authorities, they have to understand that this is really a very important to them. It's our flagship. With that, they also have to improve the distribution. We use more load during the transmission, and we depend on the carrier. So it's high time that authorities, they are convinced about this idea. And I think with the desalinization mill, they finally have perceived that they were fighting good fight, I mean, you know what I mean. But in a sector which is a very important sector, if we are able to raise awareness to authorities, to companies, to the sector as a whole, that this is important to Brazil, we'll be able to increase infrastructure. What should we do to improve such an infrastructure, to take energy to the right places, especially in Futuro's beach? What should we do? In addition to that, the planned capacity in opposition to the contracted one, that is key. Global companies which are after some presence in a Fortaleza market, let alone if each one of those companies, if they would open their own data center, how about your distribution lines? How about connections? Now that we have a hub where all data centers are stored and looking after their customers, this is exactly where we should emphasize energy and to appeal for more investment in high capacity energy lines. That is crucial, and it has to take place exactly where data centers are hosted. If a data center, blinks, we are going to put the whole information at hold. Fortaleza's data center is placed at Maracanaú region, which is a little bit away from Futuro's beach. They are around 40 kilometers one away from another, and it's up to the company decision to look for that industrial area to allow more power. Of course, that some additional network investments were required to cope with all the cables and the region's data center. Of course, that we also have to take into account operating issues, as we are not very close to the beach and we are closer to the industrial region, and which is an advantage, of course. I agree that companies which distribute energy, they have to replenish their data centers in a more consistent manner. We do require this sort of continuity. Of course, they should do that because we are a great client to them. We are a trustful client, and we do need and use lots of energy. Generation is another problem, especially to the northern eastern region. And between Ceará state and Rio Grande do Norte state, we have the main windmills and also solar energy. Solar energy is mainly around the Piauí region, so this is no longer a problem. But our needs is to expand energy distribution with a very high quality level. We hope we can benefit as much as possible from the energy distribution, especially the windmills. Our climate in this region is quite good, although we would need more refrigeration, but yet energy costs are much lower. If we need more cooling, I'm going to spend more, but at least I can keep a good structure with a much lower cost. Public policies, though they have to be implemented as much as possible to guarantee better quality in the energy distribution. We have a idle capacity in Brazil. We have a number of water power plants, windmills, solar energy mills that they are just seen as projects, but they do not become a reality. And golden mine, in addition to public use, it can also foster power energy plants. Energy demand is so high, and we can take those generation mills which are not in use, they could become a reality because there will be a demand for that, believe me, but that will need some additional effort in the distributions to, do something in the Brazilian electrical power plant system. Our matrix is clean. Our customers, they demand clean matrix. We cannot have any carbon-based plant, and 85% of the Brazilian power plant is clean, and that represents a differential. We have a national intertwined system where all states are intertwined in the grid, but at the distribution end, we have to improve. We have to emphasize distribution at the main places. Usually we do not turn it on in the transmission, but rather in the distribution. And I think we should start doing that from the transmission point. We have a question. Please just let us know your name and the company you are here representing. Hi, I am from Anatel, Ceará. My name is Gilberto. I have a very traditional question. The main data center representatives have addressed the relevance of thermal loads. Ceará, despite being known as a state of wonderful beaches, we have some hilly areas. We have a village with temperatures that go 15 degrees lower than the beach temperature. With this 15 degrees temperature change, that area in the countryside could be very attractive for building up data centers. Have you ever considered that possibility? Otherwise, we could have, we would need different data centers. That region is very good for a cyber structure. If you were considering or not building up data centers in the most remote areas, in the mountains, in the countryside, have you ever considered it? Thank you. External temperature increases energy efficiency. Our goal is to cool down customers' equipments, our clients' equipments, and cooling nowadays is done via air. And we might even start performing cooling systems with water. We have some new technologies which will allow water use, but so far we use air cooling. Air comes from outside, it goes through a cooling system, and then it throws that to the customer's equipment. If our external air is colder, is cooler, the cycle efficiency is improved. You are able to cool down our customers' equipment using less energy.
O data center hoje, para você achar o local ideal dele,
A
convergência de fatores, né?
To find a better data center place, you have to have a connectivity, power, good land, you should have capacity growth, public policies, they should be in your favor. Temperature is another issue. It's, why not? We could try to, understand and place that possibility into our radar. External temperature is a important factor if we are working on a cooler region. I will give as an example Chile, where their average temperature goes around 18 to 20 degrees. We are able to use the systems that can increase free cooling, where you get part of the external temperature, you exchange internal to external temperature, and then you may insufflate that into your data center. So knowing areas which are closer to our site where we might see a potential for a mild temperature that may be useful and may be a relevant factor as how we as a company may or may not invest in data center in a region or another. Everyone knows that a data center without connectivity, it becomes an island and it will be of no use to anyone. But there are several technologies, including AI and others, that work with a very high energy demand capacity and which also relies on other technologies, and external air on a lower and mild temperature will help to accommodate systems like that. And the decision making process where we are going to go on with an direct expansion system or a chiller tower, all of that will depend on your own data center capacity. If you have a high density and a high energy by hackers, you will indeed need something different from our market standards. Just adding to what my colleagues had said, manpower or labor force, better say, could be, it's of great importance because we would require lots of people working, and for private investments we have to consider the investment volume and compare one region to another. If Futuro's beach is fully infrastructured, and we have another project which is Casa dos Ventos, the wind home, that will help us with a well located and functional data center that will be useful to our markets. To design a trend line, we would need state government support that will support our policies and will drive those policies, because if the state government just sees it as a line of investment, we might just get stuck where we are and not improve and, disseminate our activities. I have a question. Good morning. I am Aurelio Gonçalves. I'm representing here the federal sector. I have a master in technology, information, but I'm very fond on technologies. I think I'm very good at networks. I don't make money in the private sector, but I have dedicated myself in this field and I know quite a lot. I am going to give a talk at NatCon. I have a degree on strategic policies. You've talked about power problems, energy. We have solar energy, wind energy, and the Paulo Afonso Chassis is the carrier which distributes electric energy. And you guys, you are facing substation problems. Green hydrogen, this will be the topic of my talk in the convention center, where this other type of energy will be introduced. I'm quite concerned about data center maintenance. You have mentioned Maracanã. Maracanã is one region where cable is so far away from Maracanã village. The cable is at Futuros Beach, and to have a data center at Maracanã, in my opinion, this is lack of planning. Enel is a private carrier. They have their own boundaries, their owners. Federal, states, and public policies. Someone has mentioned public policies. According to 88 Constitution, we are on a public policy time. So we have to convince our authorities to deploy public policies in our data centers. And moreover, we have to guide public policies, to leverage public policies, to have more people studying and learning about the data center. 4 years ago, I was in Paraguay, where I visit a mining. The only difference is that they have low and cold temperatures over there. My server is local web from São Paulo, where energy cooling is required. Security as well. My piece of advice is that companies, they try to foster projects to the federal level. I remember I had once a teacher at my university, Professor Oliveira. He was responsible for taking to Brazil digital sign. So I would recommend the private sector to start convincing students from state and federal universities and technical schools to allocate their students to work at the sector, to share the importance of renewable energies that will be key to meet your needs. I was not aware about Maracanã city. Can I interrupt you, please? Maracanã is more like a project, but 100% of all power used by Accent it comes from renewable energy. So most of the free market for renewable energy, it's used by Accent. We are certified, it's free of carbon, and it's part of our strategy to guarantee quality. We keep talking about high energy consumption, data center, but the continuity relies not only on data center, but individuals that have their homes, they have to keep on living. And if we consume it correctly, that will guarantee a future return. And in Maracanã village, once we started our operations back in 2015, that was a place that would cope with our planning. So as to the hyperscales and so on and so forth, that was not same as other markets restriction, but that was where we had to be at that time. And that's why we have some strategic places in Fortaleza that could become or could be part of future expansions, future companies' expansions. We don't see that as a way to do it right now, but at least back in 2015, that could be suitable. No, that's fine. No worries. I'm just talking about a regional strategic position. In 2015, there was no solar energy, but now we do. Planning is key. Without planning, we won't be able to reach our goals. And let me congratulate a forum like that, where we have both the private and public sector discussing about our IT field. Thank you, and sorry for taking your time.
Complemento o NIC e o CGI, nós não somos órgãos de governo.
NIC and CGI, we are not government agencies. NIC is a private organization, not for profit, and we don't get any subsidies from the government and no tax benefits. So here we're not talking about government. Would anyone else like to talk about energy? Well, I'd like to detract from our focus slightly. I had the opportunity, well, João takes part of events abroad, and we are usually on the face-to-face with companies and telling them or to come to Brazil, São Paulo, Fortaleza, let's bring contents here. And in my view, I feel that Fortaleza is not unanimous. Well, let's go to Fortaleza. Cool. Here I go. So things are not yet on that vibe. So I wish it would. Well, it would be great if we could talk to those big companies and tell them, well, stop putting and building things in Sao Paulo and start doing that in Fortaleza. If you could say something about difference in demand for spaces, data centers in Fortaleza and other regions, even overseas. What is lacking? Is Fortaleza going to be the hub that we imagine it will? Well, on my side, I use you as a tool. Well, I tell people, well, we have top line data centers in Fortaleza. You can talk to the companies. Cool. But they actually must have the motivation and not only the return on investment, the technical, conceptual, operational parts that are not so simple to us, because actually the hyperscales, they operate this at an industrial scale. It's slightly different from ISPs and the business part, how they operate. I'd like to hear from you a bit on this. If Fortaleza is going to be this hub that we dream of, and if not, and if it is to be, what is still missing? Well, Fortaleza has a huge potential to be this hub. This is what we've been discussing and that we take abroad frequently. And many events we take part together because just as data centers are used as a tool, IX to us is used to us by us as a tool. The great point is the move I see happening is that many of the companies that are hosted with us in São Paulo, they have been bringing up this fact that Fortaleza has a potential. But I have been hearing that for some time. Fortaleza has potential, but I don't actually see this move of their moving over here. What have we done? We're trying to turn the data center environment much more competitive, much more attractive for those companies. So we've taken some internal measures in terms of planning and setting up and adapting so that we can host those companies the way they need. And the great point is the following, for example, I am a bit surprised not to see a cloud zone defined in Fortaleza. I see great market demand asking for those direct connections with public clouds in São Paulo, some overseas. And if you have this demand and if it's arriving today within the data center structure, well, hosted clients asking for this kind of service, it means that the company's industry is using those public cloud resources. The great question is it would be extremely important for those companies to open up this market with their AZs and local possibilities so that we have greater attractiveness, less latency, and better service provided in the region. As a data center, I am positioned in an open way and with great capacity, available capacity to host this kind of project, both globally and with local and national clients. I see some of those clouds as initiative to with the initiatives of coming here, especially nationally, but I think we would need a bit more power so that this happens here. And actually, we're going to keep on participating actively if these global events are trying to boost that and increase the attractiveness of the fertilizer market because we really strongly believe in it. Just a slight correction here on well, the Bala cables has two zones in our cloud. Well, people are doing quite well. Well, salespeople, can you raise your hands, please, so you can talk to them? So I think there's a timing thing here, issue. Fortaleza has been happening. It's exceeded, well, Rio de Janeiro in terms of traffic, and things have been happening. We see Google with the Firmina project, and lots of things have been happening. There is planning for those main ODBs, the main content providers, and I think it's a maturity of the content distribution architecture. This may happen eventually. This can be sped up. We can catalyze that. The state has a major role. So first, well, the funding for that, we have 44 million from the agency. So we know funding is anything is what moves things in private market. This funding for the Northeast will speed it up, will make things to happen faster. If people have money for that, this is cheap money, this speeds up so that things happen, especially. This Fortaleza actually is a super important hub, connectivity, consolidated, and also of contents. This is happening, and we get more drive. So we get Google Riot here. This is, the final boosting move. Well, I see it in the short term, public policies again, and movement of the private initiative on the side of Angola Cable. We are working hard, and colleagues here as well. Oh, I think I have the same understanding. Well, this is a second traffic point in Brazil. Actually, Fortaleza is already this hub. Obviously, we'll never be able to win over São Paulo. So demand, the great demand is in São Paulo. Brazil moves because of São Paulo. It's our locomotive. We cannot compete against São Paulo. People go there because of the gigantic demand that we have in terms of data, both for individuals and corporations. We'll never be able to compete. The data centers in São Paulo are more on cloud. They are more data centers that are not so latency sensitive. Here in the Fortaleza region, we have the edge data centers more to process to make the hub for data distribution. It's a bit slightly different beast, but in this area of edge and processing, for sure, Fortaleza tends to grow. It's exponential. We've seen the charts a while ago. All the charts, the trend line is of great growth. But we must have Well, people have to realize that this is actually a gold mine. People have to make things easier while making investments to actually happen. I mentioned another example that is positive. Barueri, on the outskirts of São Paulo, the mayor in Barueri, well, if you get there, if you want to open a data center, he lays a red carpet for you. He does everything that is possible to provide licensing, everything you need, but he makes things easier. Well, we must have that in Fortaleza. Authorities must be aware that they are the main point. So for the gears to keep turning. So it's no use having a private initiative making the efforts, and then you have the distributor, and you have the public agency. Everybody has to move together. If there is a block in the gear, the main gear that is private initiative will block. So everybody has to be aware that this is good for the region. So from the moment we understand it, what are we going to do to make life easier for those companies? It's not a bad guy that will be here and destroy things. It's a company, private initiative, bringing development for the region. So we have to look through those lenses. So we see the environment is getting better. I think the penny has dropped recently, but we still have a long way to go to get to an optimum level. I think we're moving
Assim, só
on the right track.
insistindo pouquinho, né? Quer dizer, acho que a ideia aqui de
Well,
Fortaleza,
the
ela
idea for
não só
Fortaleza
ser, vamos dizer assim,
is not
segunda
uh, just
fonte de
being
dados
a
para o
second
Brasil, mas
source of
tem o
data
risco
for
de
Brazil,
sempre
but there is
daquele, né?
also
Mas
this view, well,
Fortaleza está muito próximo de Cabo
Fortaleza
Verde,
is too
tá
close to
certo
the
que está
whole
muito
of the
próximo
Caribbean
também
and also very close
dos
to
Estados Unidos, né?
United
Então vai
States,
competir com os
and
Estados
it's
Unidos,
going to
né?
compete against the United States in this
Mas tem uma
aspect of
diferença muito
connectivity, but
importante
there
na
is
África,
good
né?
latency for Africa
Os cabos aí da Angola Cables, né? Então sempre fica aquela
with
ideia,
the
né? Que
subsea
Fortaleza
cables,
tem um
and we
potencial de
have
ser
that
um
idea.
hub a
We
nível
have the
global.
Angola cable, so
Só
we
que,
have
não sei, eu acho
this
que
idea that
não
Fortaleza has the
podemos isso
potential
como
to be a global
uma
hub,
realidade.
but
Eu
I
acho
don't
que o
see that
Chile
as a
vem se
reality.
destacando, né,
We
com
see Chile standing
pegando
out,
projetos, né?
uh,
Estão muito mais
getting
distante
projects, being much far
dessa
away
região.
or further away
Então,
from
não
this
sei,
region.
talvez assim, se realmente para isso
Perhaps
se viabilizar em Fortaleza, a gente
for this
precisaria
to
ter talvez
be
uma área ali
real in Fortaleza, we
com
might need an area
características fiscais,
with
operacionais
tax
diferentes, talvez
operational
um fundo de
features that should be
condicionamento, né,
different, perhaps a
no,
huge air
no país,
conditioning
porque
system in
tem
the
empresas que
country,
preferem não
because there are
fazer porque é
companies
muito
that
quente.
prefer not to
Queria saber
go
assim,
there
de
because it's
vocês,
too hot.
se essa
I'd
parte
like to hear from you. Well, if
vocês
this
acham
part of,
viável
do you think
ou
that's
realmente
feasible,
não, tem que aguardar, esperar
or
acontecer e
actually
eles próprios
no?
dias vão
We have to wait and see
resolver
whether
mudar
one
essa
day they'll
decisão aí.
decide to change their minds.
Não, acho que global já
I think globally,
não para futuro tão próximo, né? A
it's
gente
not for
entender
such a near future.
Fortaleza vai ser hub
Our
global.
understanding that Fortaleza will be a
Não no
global
curto
hub,
prazo, acho que
I
não,
don't
mas
think
com certeza vai
that
ser aqui para
will
América
be the
Latina,
case in the
deveria ser,
midterm, but for Latin America, it tends to be.
com certeza para o
For
Brasil já
sure,
é
for
o
Brazil,
segundo, mas
it
para a
is
América
the
Latina tende a ser.
second. For
Nosso
Latin America, it tends to
crescimento
be.
hoje ali
We have this move today that is a recent one
inteligência
of
artificial, machine learning, vai
AI,
mudar o
machine
mercado de
learning,
data
that
center
will
dado muito.
change the
Então a gente
data center
não sabe direito para
market
onde que a indústria vai caminhar, porque
drastically. So we don't know where the industry will move towards it. The power of
vê aí a Nvidia
these
hoje é
the
a
equipment
empresa
that is coming up. We see NVIDIA is a company that
maior
has
empresa do mundo hoje, passou a Apple.
become the
Por
largest
quê?
company in the world.
Fabricando as
It's
GPUs que são usadas
superseded
nos
Apple
processamentos
because
de
they
inteligência
use
artificial, machine learning.
equipment
Se a
that
gente
actually
trazer
are used for AI and
esse tipo
machine
de
learning.
processamento de
If we
dados
can
no
bring this
Brasil,
kind of data
não
processing
só
to Brazil, not only
cloud e o
the
edge, mas a gente
cloud and edge, but
convencer
are
essas
bringing
big
and
techs,
convincing
todo mundo
those big
fala mal
techs.
delas, né? Aí a gente
Everybody
vê que
criticizes
a gente
them. Other
olha
than
o
being
sonho
friends,
deles.
we
Então,
look
essas
them and
coisas que às vezes
enemies. So that actually is a hurdle for development. If we bring those big techs to Brazil and if we convince them that Brazil is a good point for them to process their AI, machine learning data that are not so sensitive to latency, they can put the data here, they process the data in Brazil and export the data wherever they like. And then I think we can turn Fortaleza into a global hub. But we must first bring those companies here so that they can feel confident in Brazil. In Brazil, we don't have, as I mentioned a while ago, don't have we have a NIDO generation. We have the interconnected grid. We have everything to bring those companies here. So what we actually need is to give them confidence and security so that the data that they will process here in Brazil is data that will be safe. They will bring equipment here to process, nuclear energy somewhere. And then perhaps there is a data breach here. So where the equipment is, so there is an officer that simply seizes the equipment. We must have legal security people. The big techs must know that when they place their equipment there, here, that cannot be breached. So that's processing information, data from all over the world, intelligence. I think it has to be handled. The data hall where the equipment is, not the data center. It should be treated as an embassy. You must have national sovereignty over that room. Nobody touches it. So that equipment is part of a different sovereignty or property. So it's hard to do that, but we must work towards that. Actually, Julio, it would be good if we could have some kind of duty free or in tax incentives. This would work. I'm not talking only about data centers. When we talk about AI, everything that involves all this topics, Brazil is somewhat complex. Well, the tax issues does not favor the import of this kind of equipment because of taxes on GPU. This is not so attractive. The comment is quite fortunate of ours saying that Brazil may be used as a great processing center of this kind of service. We know that the structure of AI has three derivations. The main that uses more energy, that demands more energy, is the part of training known as actually training. So we have inference that is closer to the user, better known as edge, and we have the data lake. Great challenge is that you have small AI points already running in Brazil, but everything on edge. We don't have a training structure. So this is the kind of incentive there should be. And then we're talking about data centers of 200, 300 megawatts of energy, great capability to host this kind of equipment. So when we have tax incentives, so we encourage customers to bring this kind here, companies, big techs, whatever they are or whoever they are, to have us centers here. So the data center should adhere to this kind of capacity. So with the large projects, Ascenti has great plans. I cannot share so many details when we talk about capacity, but I don't see it as something so close to what we actually need. And this makes a big difference when you have a data strategy. We talk a lot about the severity of data, where data is being trained. Usually in the US, countries that have great energy capacity and a lot of available space. And what happens? It's much cheaper for you to have, the tax aspects for you to have equipment processing in this kind of training environment. Ashburn, for example, is a great data center field. How can we make Brazil be turned into that? How can we make Fortaleza to be turned into that? It's just tax. As simple as that. So with the tax aspect, we have the energy challenge. Brazil may have a lot of idle power, the difficulty of delivering at certain points for you to supply a structure that will support 100, 200 megawatt in electric power. It's very complex. It's not just a mere system that you plug and play. It depends on great planning for that. So all these fronts must happen in a very organized way, from tax to energy planning, space, areas to be used, and the impact to the neighboring communities. Well, when you say you're going to build a data center in a specific area and there are a lot of households around, look at the problem it is when you start with generation in terms of noise. It's absolutely absurdly high. So there are many points that should be thought about, but actually I see a great challenge, but also a great opportunity for the Brazilian market, especially regarding AI. It's something that is here to stay in operation in the world, and it should briefly arrive to Brazil. If we're ready, I don't say a centi. The data center market will have a great adherence, and that will change our situation considering the globe. The strategic thing aspect will change absurdly.
Well, as Rogério has well said, there are several variables, and it's not very simple to say why Fortaleza is not quite there yet in comparison to Chile. In Chile, we know that they have a great technology investments. They are a mature country from economic perspective. It's not just a matter of legal aspects, but they also have public incentives to attract foreigner investments. They are very sensitive. If they have alternatives, if they are afraid, they're going to direct their investments somewhere else. And also we have the maturity aspect. And with those variables, there are some bottlenecks and some others to be leveraged. AI will be a great lever. And just for your understanding, according to Google and ChatGPT, search, I consume tenfold higher energy if I search for ChatGPT. With AI, latency is low and a closed infrastructure, which will foster Fortaleza as well as other large connectivity hubs. Other technologies will come to foster our sector. That may be speeded up or not. If I decelerate, I will invest more funding, incentive policies, which will in fact speed up all this scenario. We have two questions, I guess, from our participants. Good morning. My name is Moacir Regis. I am a professor at Sierra Institute. With 5G deployment, which in addition to allow high traffic capacity within 5G network, it also adds low latency as an additional benefit. With that, hubs, they have to be as close as possible. How about smaller data centers, mini data centers? What is your take on this new market, and if you have any additional planning for that? Well, let me go back a little bit before 5G frequency. data, it has to be processed somewhere. And with 5G, we reduce the latency, we increase the velocity, but the information has to be processed somewhere else. And the time to go and come is what really makes a difference. By working at a different frequency, you may reach a better latency in the meantime. But if we have a well geographic distribution where science is being distributed. Today, we have projects such as Starlink reaching several different points, and they take their equipment and they have to do exactly as 5G does. They have to bring closer the satellite to better convey that connectivity. So with 5G, we have to be much closer to our population. Otherwise, our range should be broader as well. So data center has two models, the one which processes the information as a whole and the edge model, the one that is closer to people, where there will be a shorter, lower latency. If that is well defined and understood, I'm not going to say that one market data center will be able to cover all of that. Of course not. We have hyper data centers, people that have a computer node where information is processed. On the other hand, we have data centers with cache nets, CDNs, and if we step backwards, AI, autonomous car which uses AI in their sensors, they must have closer connection points to the areas where they are running. Otherwise, you will run into a collapse. And 5G works like that. 5G is really well planned. 5G has all the distribution pieces closer to their users, which improves information quality. Therefore, the two data center models, computer node and edge data center, they are both key for 5G strategy.
O João falou muito bem aqui, basicamente é isso, o 5G.
Exactly. 5G fosters web data center type, which works on low latency and operations such as autonomous car, remote surgeries, where 1 millisecond is more than enough maybe to run into a child accident who just ran in front of the car. So let's keep those two things in mind. Good morning. My name is Bruno from ISP, and I have two questions in one. What can Cearás data centers do to be able to allow connections such as Google and others? Very recently, we had a problem with Google IX.br, where we were routed to São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro to keep connecting. So what were the reasons or criteria that Facebook and Google staff considered? What are they doing to take those data centers as close as possible to us for some other additional details? What are we doing here in Ceará? What are Vital people or other data centers are doing? Connections here are tough. We are one of the states which connect the most to the continent fibers. What are you doing? What are you doing to take these people over here? What are the negotiations? Because we are considering doing that over here as well. Google is not leaving ATM. It will navigate in ATM. It will just stop using route server.
vai se estabelecer diretamente com uma sessão BGP entre o participante.
It will be established between the participant and Google.
Pra gente, né, inclusive na live aí que a gente promoveu, foi que eles estão
Google
criando novo limite aí de
is setting new standards. Anything above 4 giga connections would just be done throughout a direct connection. We have discussed about it, and we are doing our best to show to Google's team that Brazil is a continental country. Over here in the Northeast, we have several providers that need to get Google's content, and they use IX, and some of them, they have a traffic which goes beyond 4 giga. So we have to go to find some sort of additional solution. I wish they could be present at all data centers, all IXPs for PNIs. That would be ideal. At IX, our goal is to increase quality and Brazilian internet. But if we are no longer necessary, fair enough. We've done our homework. We've done what we had to be done. We did what had to be done, sorry. That's a very interesting concern because this is a question that many people asks. That is a bilateral condition at IX. What are the main factors, though, that are positive anytime that you work on a company that has a great traffic interest? First, well-connected data centers. What have we got in terms of cultural value? To be neutral, any carrier is really welcome in our data center, which helps a lot. Who will take the traffic to end users? Everyone. Everyone has lived a pandemic. We know the importance of data centers. We know the importance of providers. Had to do how much they had to do to, allow the road to keep running. Attraction to content providers is increased. As a guy who generates content among several platforms which run at Google, Meta, or any other company, they have to take that content on a fast and efficient manner to the ends, to the extremities. So our partnership is very positive. And not only we have worked on planning to have a useful IT load in the data centers above 4 or 5 megabytes of energy. My capacity is very good for the enterprise market. What is an enterprise market? Anyone that is willing to use a structure like that, allowing more access to the ultimately content. Here I'm talking about ecosystem, carriers, content, companies. So we have our goal is to interconnect everyone to allow any other content company to look for a regional data center, maybe Accent or any other one, to help with the integration and to have a strong IX, an IX with the demand. Content and distributors, they are responsible to have a strong IX. That's why these strategic actions are trying to motivate things like that. So companies, they won't be present just at one place, but at several, helping information access. Anything else? Any other questions? I guess we still have another question.
Bom dia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Edson. I am from Techno Center, and I have a question about Fortaleza's data centers. What is still missing for large companies like Microsoft and AWS to offer VN services C2 in our region? Is it a matter of infrastructure, bureaucracy? What is missing yet?
Na verdade, isso aí passa muito pela estratégia deles, né?
This is up to their own
A gente
strategy.
fornece o serviço ali
We
para
supply
colocar o ativo de
services to them
Agora, o
to
serviço que
deploy
entra para a gente
IT assets.
disponibiliza para os
But the
clientes,
service
já
which
é uma
they
estratégia da
make
companhia
available to
que
their
a gente não consegue
customers,
intervir aqui, né?
that is their
O
own
que
strategy.
importa é
We
que o
cannot
data center
interfere.
tem
What
capacidade
matters, though, is that the
de
data
processar
center
qualquer
will have a
tipo de dado
capacity
que
to
ele queira.
process any type of
A
data.
definição dessa
And
estratégia de
however,
cada empresa, a
the
gente realmente
the
não
strategic
consegue
definition,
ter uma
it's up
visão
to
clara assim de
each
por que
one
que
of
ele não
them.
presta
We
esse serviço
cannot clearly see
específico àquela
why they
região,
would
né?
not offer a service like that in our region or in this region.
Trabalhar na questão proativa.
We try to be as proactive as possible to have space, connectivity, IX, I mean, all those factors which are favorable to allow a setting like that.
Principalmente na questão energética, a gente tenta prever
And as to planning in energy source, there will be a specific energetic boom where we have to foresee that we will have to add 2, 3, or 4 megabytes for a specific company to bring the computer nodes.
Muito bem colocado até que eles têm uma zona de cloud.
Angola in Africa has their own cloud zone, but companies like AWS and Microsoft that will rely more on their own study to say, well, fair enough, this company has this amount of companies, population, yes or no. Therefore, the role of data center is to be ready and to motivate them to come, but their final decision will depend on each one of the companies. Yes, exactly. As they said, it's part of their strategic plan. We are going to find part of this answer in the Northeast demand, which will guide companies' investments, as well as time. Time is a matter, and there are 2 cloud zones here. Don't forget about that. Benefit from it. Yes.
Olhar o mapa global, né, de presença dessas
We
empresas.
have also to consider a global monitoring, global presence, global south. It's quite popular. We might have something down here in South America, a little bit in Africa and Australia. All the rest would be addressed to the Northern Hemisphere. If we go abroad to sell Brazil, we try to work closer to those companies that ignore Brazil. They don't know that we have a large number of internet users, that we are one of the largest economies in the globe. You know, if you talk to Amazon and you say, no, I need to have my own zone in Fortaleza, they're going to say, come on, are you crazy? This will require a really high investment, and it goes beyond the connectivity. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit more about the fact that companies, they depend on interconnection, and some of them, they build up their own sub-cables, their networks, they have some sort of consortium participation. And it's funny to say so, because cables are over here in Fortaleza, but still they prefer to have their data center infrastructure based in São Paulo or in Rio de Janeiro state. I don't know, it's tough to say. we are still trying to grab it and we keep on talking. That might depend on a populational matter. São Paulo is a large city, but the downtown area is where mostly companies are present. And the Northeast region is also a large region. I don't know if considering a public cloud for those large sites, how can I cope with the low latency? If I have a low latency in Fortaleza, how can I work closer to Salvador, which is at Bahia State, also in the northeast region of the country? I don't know, it's just some food for thought, so we can, open a further discussion. But considering large continental dimensions in Brazil, they might take the area where there is a higher populational density, and they will concentrate their efforts around these areas. I don't know, you might be right, but there is something else that I would like to suggest to ISPs to be connected to a greater number of IXPs. If it is a northeastern provider, connected to Fortaleza Hub, Recife Hub, which is another city also in this region. If you connect to other additional hubs, you may increase your possibility to reach other internet networks. I have 800 AS in Fortaleza, sort of speaking. If we have 1,500 in Fortaleza, you might be considering, yes, we have a significant number that might be interested.
Yes, directly or indirectly, we try to sow the seeds in the field. So we have to create local encouragement. If the companies are not connected to the IXPs, we have no argument to bring up strategics and bring these guys here. Doesn't that make sense? So since there are no more questions, so we have 8 more minutes. If you could just say a few more words and some wrap-up comments. I think we have a great pathway to go. If we look at the US, Ashburn, they have 5 gigawatts of installed capacity. We have 500 mega in Brazil, down of Cushman here. So we're still in the beginning. So we have a long way to go in this market. Fortaleza has huge potential. We look here with positive eyes. We know this is going to develop a lot and generate a lot of good opportunities. We see in the US, as I mentioned this year, São Paulo will always be São Paulo, as Ashburn as well. We have Miami, Dallas coming up with connectivity, Mexico, bringing contacts from Latin America and other hubs, Atlanta coming up in the US scenario. We have lots of things happening there. We know this will be coming here, and it's a matter of timing, maturity of technologies, new technologies that leverage these new businesses. In Fortaleza has already happened. To me, it's a reality as a company and has been consolidating. It's going to grow a lot for sure. I believe that my final remarks are these. We see an industry that will grow quite strongly. As Guilherme mentioned, the data center capacity, the whole US, not only in the Ashburn, is about 20 gigawatt of power that they consume to cool the equipment. So we talk about the size of data centers in terms of gigawatt. In the US, the total installed capacity of data centers is 20 gigawatts. We here are about 500, 600 megawatts in terms of power, adding up everything. So we are actually an embryo stage.
vier tudo que a gente acha
So
que vai
if the
vir,
growth
é
comes in,
exponencial.
everything we believe will be exponential.
E Fortaleza vai se
And
beneficiar disso,
I
mas a gente
believe
volta a dizer,
Fortaleza will benefit
tem,
from that, but
tem que
we
ter o pessoal,
keep
do
saying,
mesmo
well,
jeito
we
que a
must
gente
have
tem,
people, just as we have
por exemplo, energia eólica, energia solar, a gente sabe
wind
que tem
power,
incentivos públicos para
solar power,
fomentar
we
esse tipo
know
de
have
matriz
public
energética.
funding
A
to
usina
foster
hidrelétrica até
this
hoje,
energy
ela é
mix.
uma
The
fonte renovável,
hydroelectric
mas
power
ainda gera
plant
discussões aí
is
por conta de
renewable, but
reservatórios e
it's
tudo mais.
controversial because of
Mas a gente
reservoirs,
vê que o
etc.
governo, não só o governo federal,
We
estadual,
see not
municipal,
only
eles,
the
quando falam em usina
federal
eólica,
government,
usina
but
solar,
also
a
state and
máquina do
local. When
Estado
people talk
movimenta
about
para fazer
wind,
aquilo
solar
lá
power,
acontecer.
the state machine
Todo mundo se
moves to make
beneficia, é uma fonte
those things to
renovável, é
happen.
algo bom para
Everybody
o país, e a
benefits. It's
gente
a
vê que a
renewable
máquina
energy source. It's
movimenta
positive for the
para
country, and we
tirar
see that
aquele projeto
the
do papel.
public or
A gente tem que ter
machine
essa
moves
mesma
to actually get that
mentalidade para o
to
data
happen.
center.
We must
Porque o
have
data
the
center
same
ele vai fomentar não só a
mindset for
indústria
the
de
data
data
center.
center,
It
que
will
já é
foster
gigante,
the industry of data center that is
equipamentos, mão
giant.
de obra, a construção civil
Equipment,
se beneficia
labor,
do
civil
setor de data
construction
center,
industry
a
benefits
população
from
como um todo, porque melhora a
data
conectividade,
center
melhora acesso à
construction, the
informação,
population. It
mas a gente
improves
melhora
connectivity,
também
access to
esse
information,
outro
but we
setor
also
que é o
improve
setor
this other
elétrico
industry that
brasileiro.
is
Então a
the
gente
electric
consegue
power
matar, o
industry.
famoso ditado lá, matar
We
dois
try
coelhos numa
to
cajadada só.
kill
A gente
two
ajuda o
birds with
setor de data
one
center
stone.
e a gente
We
ajuda o setor
support the data
elétrico
center
brasileiro.
industry
A
and the
gente tira do
Brazilian
papel
electric
usinas
power
que
industry. We take
estão aí
from
paradas e que pode sair do papel, pode
project
gerar emprego, pode
power
gerar
plants
construção
that
civil,
are on
movimenta a
paper
economia,
that they may generate
equipamento,
jobs,
transmissão,
move
torre de
equipment,
transmissão, cabo,
transmission
subestações,
towers,
tudo isso
cable,
movimenta a
subs
reboque da indústria de
plants,
data
all
center.
that
Então a gente
moves
tem que
the
ter essa
industry of
mensagem
data
final
centers. So
de
we must have this
conscientizar
final
as
message of
autoridades para que
raising
transforme isso numa
awareness
política de Estado
and
e
authority
não
so that
só uma
that can be
política da
turned into
iniciativa
state
privada aqui na
policy, not
região.
only of the private
E é isso aí.
initiative in the region. That's it.
É isso aí, pessoal. Vou
That's
vou
it.
aproveitar para trazer
I'm
algumas
just going
informações
to
adicionais.
take the
Tem um
opportunity
pouco a
to
ver
bring
com o
some
tema,
additional
mas
information. It's a bit
alguns pontos
related
foram
to the
questionados aqui
topic.
da
Some
questão da
points have been
viabilidade das
questioned here
conexões locais e tudo
on the
mais.
feasibility of local
Vou mostrar alguns
connections,
planos que a
etc.
Ascente
Let me
teve
show
aqui
you some
de um
plans
tempo
that
para
we
cá
had
que a gente vem
at
trabalhando forte.
Ascenti. We've been
Então, por
working
exemplo,
hard on them.
investimentos
For
locais. A
example,
Ascente não tinha
local investment.
uma força de
Ascenti did
vendas
not
aqui
have a
na
sales
região de
force
Fortaleza.
in the
Tudo era feito
Fortaleza
aqui por São
region.
Paulo. Agora temos uma
Everything
força de
was
vendas aqui
served from
dedicada na
São
região de
Paulo. We
Fortaleza,
have a sales
atendendo as
force
empresas
in
daqui e
Fortaleza, serving companies
desenvolvendo essas
here and
oportunidades.
developing
Além
such
disso,
opportunities. In addition,
recentemente trouxemos
recently we
o Service
had
Fabric da Digital
the
Reach para o
service
investidor da Ascente
fabric of
para o
Digital
Brasil. Está
Huge that
centralizado hoje
Ascenti
na
to
região de São
Brazil,
Paulo,
in São
Vinhedo
Paulo,
e
and
Campinas, e
Vinhedo
está
and
promovendo esse tipo
Campinas
de
around
conexão
São Paulo,
global, tanto com
promoting
nuvens
this kind of
públicas, com
global connection
conteúdos
with public clouds and
globais e entre as
contents that
empresas
are
também.
global and
Então,
amongst
aí mais
companies as well.
ponto que a gente tem
Here
um
it's another
planejamento,
point
sim,
that
de
we
estudar o
have
mercado de Fortaleza
planning
para
of
viabilizar
studying
esse
this
tipo de
fertilizer
conectividade aqui
market to
também.
make
Não
this kind of
só
connectivity feasible in
de São Paulo
Fortaleza
para o
as
mundo,
well,
mas de
not only from
Fortaleza para
São
o
Paulo
mundo.
to the world,
A
but
gente
from
entende
Fortaleza
que
to the world.
Fortaleza é o
We
quintal do Brasil,
understand that
gente. A gente está
Fortaleza
num ponto
is
extremamente
our
conectado.
backyard. We
A
are
gente tem os cabos submarinos, a gente
very
tem
well
todos os
connected. We
fatores
have
positivos
subsea
para ter
cables.
muito
We have
sucesso
all
aqui. E
positive
antecipando as
factors to have the
necessidades que as
success
nuvens
and
públicas grandes
anticipating
venham ter
that the
aqui,
public
a gente está
clouds may
estudando
have
também a
here,
possibilidade de
the
estender os
outreach
nossos
they may have.
produtos
We
para
want to
cá,
extend our
para
products
viabilizar que
here
vocês
to
consigam
make it
acessar a informação que
feasible
vocês
for you to
precisam a
access
qualquer
the
momento.
information you need at
E
any
uma coisa
time.
interessante é que
Something
essa ferramenta
interesting
que a gente trouxe,
that the tool
essa
that we've
plataforma,
brought, this
ela não conecta
platform,
somente as coisas
does
que
not
tem
only
dentro dos data
connect
centers da
things that we
Ascente ou
have
da
in the
Digital
Ascenti data
Realty, ela
centers
vai
or
além,
digital
ela vai em data
realty.
centers de
It
outras
goes
empresas, ela vai
beyond
em
to
diversos
other
pontos do
companies' data
mercado para
centers in
viabilizar o
several
acesso à
points of the
informação.
market to make
Então,
access to
eu acho que é
information
algo válido para a
feasible.
gente
This is
compartilhar aqui
something
também,
valid for
para que
us to
vocês tenham
share here
visibilidade que a
so
gente
that
está
you have
tentando
the
impulsionar,
visibilities
sim, a
that we're
questão
trying to
da
drive
conectividade dos ecossistemas aqui na
connectivity
região e em São
ecosystems in
Paulo
the
também.
region and
E
also
aí
in São
eu
Paulo.
deixo em aberto aqui
And
para vocês
I leave it
quiserem
open to
conhecer um
you.
pouco mais a
If you
Ascente,
wish
quiser
to
falar com o
know a
nosso
bit
time de
more of
vendas, eles
Ascenti, want
tá
to
aqui
talk about to our sales team. We have Marcos representing them here, but we are here with our doors open. I thank you, Rogério, Guilherme, and João. Walter, for your participation. And let's have a round of applause to them, please.
O Marco Aurélio Montoro, da RNP, para fazer a próxima
I'd
apresentação.
like to invite Marco Aurélio Montoro for the next presentation. He made a presentation at the Abrams event, and he talked about several initiatives in São Paulo of INP. Very interesting. In addition to their having their networks or chains in towns, and they have participation of the powers of the interconnected Amazon, they now have projects state infoways interconnecting cities throughout Brazil, and I felt that was extremely interesting and encourage him to propose a presentation here. I do hope it will be very interesting for those that haven't gotten to know those projects. They are open to participations from ISPs, providers, and I think this is an extremely relevant topic to the whole of the Brazilian internet world. Thank you.
Bom dia, pessoal.
Good morning, everyone.
Deixa eu me ajustar aqui.
Let me
Problema
get
de
ready.
Não é
It's an
inteligência
AI
artificial,
problem.
é a idade
It's not
avançada de óculos, fica ruim.
artificial intelligence, it's advanced
Bom,
age,
eu sou Marco
actually.
Montoro, coordenador de
I'm Marco
infraestrutura da
Montoro,
engenharia
coordinator of
da RNP, Rede
infrastructure
Nacional
of
de Ensino e
engineering
Pesquisa.
of RNP,
Bom, em
the
primeiro lugar,
national
agradeço
chain
muito
of research
a figura do
and
Moreiras pelo
teaching.
incentivo e
I'd
pelo
like to
convite.
thank for the invitation,
E o espaço aqui para a
Dona
gente
Julia,
apresentar pouquinho
for the
do que a
space
gente
of our
tem feito, do que a gente ainda
presenting
vai
what we
fazer.
have
Tem
been doing,
muita
what
coisa
we'll
para ser
still
feita,
do. There's a
desafios
lot to be done,
complexos.
complex challenges.
Bom, uma pequena
Well,
agenda aqui, né? Que é a
just a
RNP,
brief
a
agenda.
nossa
What is
infraestrutura
RNP?
atual, o
Our
nosso
current
patrimônio
infrastructure,
nacional e as
our
nossas redes
national backbone,
metropolitanas,
our metropolitan
novos projetos e
networks, new
oportunidades,
projects
o
and
programa
opportunities,
Conecta com as
the
infovias
Connexa
estaduais e
program
a
with
infovia
state
nacional, como o
infovias or
Moreiras comentou.
infoways as the national infoway, as
Vamos
when
lá.
it is mentioned.
Só para
Well,
saber o quanto eu me
just
demoro
to
nisso, quem aqui nunca
show you
ouviu
how
falar
long
da
I've been
RNP?
on this. Who has never heard of RNP?
Também. Bom, a
Okay.
RNP ela é a rede acadêmica
RNP
brasileira,
is the
né?
Brazilian
Ela foi
academic
criada como
network.
projeto em
It was created
1989.
as a project in
Em
1989. In
1992,
1992,
ela se tornou uma
it
organização
became
social
a
privada,
private
sem fins
social
lucrativos.
organization,
Ela tem
not for
conselho de
profit. It
administração.
has a
E
board of
hoje a
directors,
gestão,
and today
hoje a gente
the
tem
management.
contratos de
Today we
gestão
have
com
management
programa
contracts with
interministerial,
an
né,
interministry
MCT, MEC,
program,
Ministério da
MCTI,
Saúde, Cultura
MCOM,
e
Ministry of
Defesa.
Health, Culture,
Hoje a
and
RNP ela
Defense,
conecta
Science,
mais de
Technology,
800
Education.
instituições de ensino
We
e pesquisa,
connect over 800 institutions
prioritariamente federais,
of
atendendo mais de
teaching and
1.800 campos
research,
universitários,
mostly
institutos de
federal,
pesquisa, museus,
serving over
hospitais e
1,800
parques tecnológicos.
university
Além disso, a RNP
campuses,
apoia
research centers, museums,
grandes projetos
hospitals, and
científicos,
technological
LNCC, entre
hubs. We
outros,
support great
redes
scientific
temáticas
projects,
como CUT, a
thematic
Rede
networks as
Universitária de
RUT, the
Telemedicina,
University
universidades
Network of
abertas e vários
Telemedicine,
outros.
open universities, and several other projects.
Hoje, a
Today,
RNP tem backbone
RNP has a backbone with 15,000 kilometers of the fibers with our own optical systems. We have the forecast with the next projects of implementation getting to 30,000 kilometers of the fiber to 2026. On this infrastructure, INP is not just connectivity, it's not just infrastructure, not only network. On the whole infrastructure, INP has services that are made available to the academic community. Among these services, we have collaboration and communication, web conference, phone at RNP, digital content service EduPlay, file sender, digital diploma, identity management services, Federation Cafe, where we have EduOn, which is a portal for of connectivity that is global. ICP do infrastructure of public key, strategic hosting services, and several others. Let us talk a bit more about the optical infrastructure of RNP. Today, RNP operates in what we call seventh generation backbone of it's a multi-gigabit backbone, and many of those routes are in 200 gig. This infrastructure we connect higher educational and research that we can connect by 100 gig through our backbone. Our idea, obviously, is to expand this and take this throughout the country, and this has to be done, obviously, gradually. And how we do this, I'm going to explore this further through partnership infrastructure with the electric power companies, Telebrás, all the utilities and carriers. It's worth mentioning here by 2014-15, and when the country went through the economic crisis, RNP made the investments in infrastructure by itself. All the resources that we receive from the ministries, we applied in the construction of metropolitan network, but strategically, we felt that there was a lot of infrastructure built by Brazil, obviously not throughout the national territory, but there was a lot of infrastructure, and part of it was idle, which allowed us to propose cooperation agreements to swap such infrastructure. RNP had its own hub that was decently sized. We started swapping with infrastructure from other partners. I'm going to mention that when I talk about our strategies today. Our backbone, we have cooperation agreements with the electric utilities, Chess, Furnas. For some time, we can use of fiber peer of PGW, of those utility companies. Those cooperation agreements are they're granting the fiber peer, and we go with the optical system, and we split the capacity of the optical system, and the utilities manage that. Our backbone today goes mostly through this infrastructure. And now through the InfoWays, we start making all of this capillary, bringing this infrastructure to hinterland, bringing resilience and redundancy to our national infrastructure, and even more so sharing this with state governments and also regional providers through our cooperation agreements. We have some utilities, Taesa, Madeira, Telebrás, electric power utilities, and then I'll explain how this interaction works with regional providers. These agreements with the electric utilities allowed us to have initial lighting at 100 gig. We started with 10 channels. Some parts we have more lit channels. Some routes are lit in partnership with the providers. I'm going to tell you a bit how we do that now. This simplified representation of these tracks of each one of those utility
Além disso,
footprints.
além dessa nossa infraestrutura de backbone,
In addition
a gente tem
to
as
our
nossas redes
backbone structure,
metropolitanas.
we have our
Eu
metropolitan
estou na RNP
networks.
desde
I have been at
2007.
RNP since
Esse projeto das redes
2007.
metropolitanas
This
começou como
metropolitan
piloto
project
de
started as a
2005.
pilot in
Eu
2005.
tive o prazer aí, o
I had
trabalho
the
de
pleasure and the
praticamente
work of
participar da
practically
implantação de
taking
todas essas
part of the
90
implementation
redes
of those
que a gente
90
já tem em
networks
operação
that we
hoje.
already have in
No
operation
momento, a gente
today.
está com mais 19 redes em
Currently, we
implantação
have
e a
19 plus
expectativa, através da
networks and
execução desses
being
projetos, é que a
implemented,
gente
and through
chegue
those
próximo aí
projects,
a
we get
200 redes
to
metropolitanas no
200
final de
metropolitan
2026.
networks
Da
at the end
mesma
of
forma, através
2026.
de
Likewise,
obtenção de
through
infraestrutura em parceria com
infrastructure
provedores
in
regionais.
partnership with
Note que eu
regional
toco bastante
providers.
nesse
Note that
ponto,
I touch
porque
this
isso é muito
point
importante,
repeatedly
tanto para a
because this is
gente,
very
como
important,
a gente acha para vocês também, para
as
vocês
we
provedores.
believe it is to you, providers.
Bom, vamos lá. Os novos projetos e
Well,
oportunidades,
the
na
new
verdade, eles não
projects
são
and
tão novos assim,
opportunities,
porque
they're
já estão
not
em
so
execução há
new
quase
anymore because they have been carried
É,
out for a year
fomos
now.
incumbidos pelo MCT
We have been
de
commissioned
executar
by
o programa Conecta.
the Ministry of
O
Science,
programa
Technology and
Conecta
Innovation
ele tem a
to
finalidade
implement
ampla
the
de inclusão
Connecta
digital e
program
oferta
that has
inescalável de uma cyberinfraestrutura
aims
segura
at
para
expanding
educação,
a
pesquisa e
safe
inovação
cyberspace
no
for
Brasil, em
innovation,
parceria com os
research, and
estados e o setor
education
privado.
partnership with the states and the
O
private
Conecta está
sector.
baseado em 4
Connecta
linhas
is based
de
on
ação.
4
Eu já
action
deixei
lines,
ressaltado aí
but I
o que eu vou falar aqui, que são as infovias
highlighted what I'm going
estaduais
to
e a
talk
infovia
about,
nacional, né?
the
Que
state
são
and
as infovias
national
para educação e
infoways,
pesquisa.
which is
Além
for
disso, fazem
research
parte do programa
and
Conecta
development. In
armazenamento e
addition, we
segurança
have for
cibernética,
connections,
plataformas de dados para
cyber
CTI e
security and
educação
storage,
e capacitação
platform of
digital.
data for
Mas isso é
science,
mais
technology,
informativo
innovation
para
and
vocês ficarem
education, and
sabendo que
digital
consiste o programa.
capacity building, just for you to
Bom,
know what the
as
program is all
infovias
about.
estaduais.
If
Eu vou dar uma
state
pequena
infoways, I'm going
contextualização
to
disso.
set the
Essas
context.
infovias elas vão ter um
Those
papel
state
importante
infoways will
no
have a
complemento e
major role
integração
in
das
complementing and
infraestruturas óticas
integrating
ligadas
the
a outras linhas de
optical
ação.
infrastructures
Então,
linked to
a
other
gente já
action
teve
lines.
outras
We
iniciativas,
have had
algumas
other
estão em
initiatives.
fase
Some
final,
are
por
at the
exemplo,
final
veredas novas
stage, as for
estaduais,
example,
a implantação de
veredas
13
novas
redes
and
metropolitanas
estaduais,
em algumas
3
cidades
new
de maior relevância.
metropolitan networks
O
in
Nordeste
major towns.
conectado,
The
vale aqui
Northeast
comentar que
connected.
dentro do
It's worth
Nordeste
mentioning
conectado, na
that
verdade,
within
conectado
connected
foi
Northeast or
a
Nordeste conectado,
implantação de 20
that was
redes
the implementation of
metropolitanas
20
na região
metropolitan
Nordeste.
networks in the northeastern
No estado do Ceará,
region.
dessas
In
26
the
são
state of Ceará,
no estado do Ceará.
26 are in the
Deixa eu ver
state
se
of
eu me lembro de
Ceará. Let me
todas.
see if I can recall them
Iguatu,
all.
Crateús,
Iguatu,
Crato,
Crateús,
Juazeiro do
Crato,
Norte,
Juazeiro do Norte,
Quixadá.
e Quixadá.
Falta uma. Não vou
One
lembrar, desculpa.
missing.
São 90 para guardar.
So there are 90
Bom,
to keep in mind.
juntando as nossas redes Comep com o Nordeste
Combining our
conectado, com
command
veredas novas estaduais,
network
com
with
o
the
nosso
Nordeste
conectado
conectando
Paz, que o
veredas
Moreiras
novas
comentou aqui, eu vou
estaduais
falar a
and
seguir.
connected. And Paz mentioned
O
this.
Infovia, o
Infovia
Infovias
or
estaduais vem
the
para
state
agregar tudo isso
Infoways is here to
e
add
trazer
to
maior
all of
resiliência
that
para toda
and
essa
bring more
infraestrutura,
resilience to the whole
conectando de
infrastructure,
forma resiliente
connecting in a
todas essas redes
resilient
metropolitanas
way
pelo
all
país.
the metropolitan networks throughout the country.
Antes de chegar lá nas infovias, vou comentar
Before
também
getting
sobre
to
essa
the
ação muito
Infoways, I'm
interessante
going to
do
talk about
PAIS.
this very interesting
Projeto
action
muito
of
desafiador. Isso
PAIS. It's a
consiste
very
na
challenging
criação
project. It's a
de 8
sustainable and integrated
infovias,
Amazon program.
8
It's
infovias
28
subfluviais
infoways that are
pelos rios da
sub
Amazônia. Todo
river
mundo sabe que a
in
região
the Amazon
amazônica
regions.
é de
Everybody knows
difícil
that the
acesso.
Amazon region is of
Então, a gente está
difficult
trabalhando na
access.
construção dessas
We're working
infovias. A
in the
infovia 00 é
building
chamada de
of those
00
infoways.
porque foi
00 is
piloto.
called 00 because it was
RNP
a
que
pilot.
introduziu a implantação dessa
RNP
infovia
conducted the
00
implementation
já
of
está
the
operando, já está
00
entregue.
Info 8 already in operation.
Foi construída com recursos
It
federais.
was
Está em
built with
operação já há
federal
algum tempo.
funds. It's been in operation for quite some
Conectando, se
time,
não me engano,
connecting, if I'm not mistaken,
da região
5
amazônica.
cities in the Amazon region. Info via 01 or InfoWay 11 was implemented by EAD with a previous experience of the pilot project. It's about closing in terms of documentation. It's already operational. Resources have been used also funds from the auction of 5G, and it's been in operation for some time. EAF works in the other one, it's working in the other entities. The 2, 3, 4 are in final stage, about to be delivered. They will start operating shortly. And we also have the challenges of invoice 567. RNP has some participation in this invoice in accepting the infrastructure. It's also going to use the infrastructure to serve its teaching and research organizations in the region. And we should stress the operation model for those infoways that comes from InfoWay 00. RNP tried with certain success to implement neutral operation for those infoways at 00. We had an open process. We selected 12 carriers that are partners that take care of the operation and maintenance of such network. It's been working. We have a leading member that drives that runs it and coordinates it. Well, we have a neutral operation with 12 providers, and this should happen in the other infoways. Here we have some pictures. At the end, I'm going to share a link for a documentary that's been made in the implementation of this infoway. It's quite interesting to watch. This is a bit about the neutral operation that I've just mentioned. And this is just a picture of funds that 1.7 billion invested in this project, benefiting 77 cities or towns at 12,000 kilometers of optical fiber laid in the Amazon, operating on DWDM of high capacity optical systems that are going to integrate with all our land systems. And lastly, closing this scenario, we have an overview of where we're going to be able to get to with the implementation of those state infoways overlapping to all the other projects I've just mentioned. See, you can see that in the Northeast, we have significant number of towns and routes served in the Amazon as well. Midwest, South, we don't see that a lot. In the Southeast, for obvious reasons, we have a region that is the most developed in the country. So our mission is to try to remove the distance from the other regions. And we internally say that our wish is that researchers that are in the state of Acre or in the Amazon have the same conditions to surf the web that we have in Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo. Not here, I mean there. Now, to talk about the Connecta program of the state infoways, there were 18, now we have 19 infoways. And of those, we have to finalize 8 of them by the end of 2026. That's a request, a formalization of ours with the ministries. We are working hard on this. There are about 40 fiber kilometers to be implemented. If those 30,000 kilometers, 30,000, we have the expectation of implementing that by the end of 2026. And we have the implementation of 80 new metropolitan networks, adding to the existing one, and we should get to practically 200 networks. We also have, as the scope of this project, obtaining infrastructure through cooperation and partnerships with the state governments, electric power companies, and also regional providers. The partnership models I mentioned here, but I have a specific slide for that. Joint construction and joint illumination and infrastructure swap. So we have a picture of each one of those infoways. This is something that can be changed. It's not set in stone. This depends on the articulation we're going to have with all the participating actors of each one of those infoways. If the state government has some kind of specific need, in Bahia, for example, we have to make a redesign so that we can meet the demands of all stakeholders. Here, that was a specific slide for ABRINC, and we were trying to bring the providers. That was another conference. We're trying to bring providers to our cooperation system. That's how we've been working since 2016, conjoined illumination and long distance routes through existing infrastructure of RNP or the partners, and we can swap optical infrastructure, optical system. We joke that we do any kind of business. The only thing we try to stick to it is to actually swap apples to apples. It's hard to get installed capacity to, just fiber. So it's hard to have a comparison between the two types of structure. Notice that today we try to have swaps of optical or paid optical infrastructure, but this is the model we have. But it doesn't exclude other infrastructures, as the exchange of channels or capacity swaps. Well, we also have opportunity for equipment providers, not so much the case of the audience here, but optical transmission equipment switches for metropolitan networks, materials, hardware or project, software, especially inventory systems for the whole infrastructure. Here's an overview of our conditions, our situation. We launched our request for proposal. We cannot set a cooperation agreement with a provider because we feel they are kinder or more good-looking RNP, although we don't need to follow the laws of tenders, etc. We try to do because of isonomy and doing things in the right way. But we publish these reference terms, and then we offer the infrastructure we have, and we seek the infrastructure that we need for the implementation of these infoways. And here in an open way, areas come with their proposals, and we evaluate the possibilities, and then we set up the cooperation agreements gradually. We try not to work with a single partner in a state, not to be dependent on a single partner. So we take care to formalize several partnerships and try and seek a region of stronger action of a given provider. And we consider all of this when we make our proposals. And it is not because we already carried out these reference terms the first, second quarter that we don't have any more opportunities for those regions. If anyone is interested in infrastructure in those regions, you can talk to us. For the third quarter, what is most prominent are the infoways in Pará. Pernambuco, it's a second state. We've already built the Pernambuco network of research and teaching or education, where we have a second stage there, and the Piauí Infoway as well. And towards the end, the Alagoas Infoway and the Goiás Infoway. Those are the ones that are forecast to happen by late 2026. Within the Connecta program, we also have what we call National Infoway. Actually, the National Infoway aims at strengthening the national backbone that we already have. And through the implementation of the National Infoway, we have a budget of 85 million reais to implement some links that we believe today we need that are missing to make up our backbone, revitalizing equipment of data center of the RNP infrastructure, and this will boost what we already have today, and this will be done to prepare the infrastructure to integrate with the new infrastructure that we have been building. In a more macro view, we expect the building of 32 links for 100 gigabits for our backbones, so IP, equivalent in all POP, where RNP has POP in each one of the capital cities, and revitalizing the data centers of 9 POPs of RNPs. This project of national Infovia, so we have a swap of optical channels, capacity, collocation, and we were talking about collocation. So we are open for swaps for collocation and also transit. Likewise, opportunity to supply products and services, new routers, switches for metro, new distribution aggregation networks, critical mission network management, expansion of solutions of security of networks, automation, and reforming our POPs. Here, as I mentioned previously, I put a link. Sorry, I tested it this morning, this QR code. It's not working. If you want to take a photo of this link, this is on the RNP page. It's quite an interesting documentary. It shows a bit what the reality was like, how we worked in the execution of these sub-river cables with our partners. And lastly, I bring he fostered that well from 2015, 2016, and he said we should not invest alone. We should swap. We may swap. Well, he talks a bit about that. I do not have the link there. If you Google it, if you search for sharing infrastructure RNP, and you're going to see Grisendi's paper. He has a lot of articles on this. Well, this is it. If you have any questions, I'm available. I'm going to be here the whole day. If you want to talk to me, we can have a conversation. Thank you.
Vamos agora à última apresentação da parte da manhã. Quero aproveitar e lembrar
We have
o
our
pessoal que
last
está nos
morning
acompanhando
presentation.
no
I'd like to
YouTube ou no
take the
Facebook
opportunity to tell the people
que
following us
o
on
link
YouTube
na
or
parte da
Facebook
tarde
that the
muda,
link
né? Então
in the
a
afternoon
URL,
will
vocês estão
be different.
assistindo o
The
evento, a
URL
gente vai ter
you are
ainda
watching the
continua, não, tem
event
uma
is
apresentação do
not
Milton agora,
over yet. We
mas
have
depois a
Milton's
gente vai
presentation
sair para o
now,
almoço aqui
and then we're
e
going
a
to go
gente
for
vai
lunch,
retornar
and we'll
duas
be
da
back
tarde,
at
que
2
retorna
p.m.
no YouTube,
But we'll
no
be back
Facebook
on
em
YouTube
outra
and
URL,
Facebook
no Facebook no mesmo
at
canal,
another URL. Facebook is the
no YouTube é
same
outra URL,
channel.
a URL já
YouTube
está
is
lá,
a
é só
different
acessar o
URL. You
IX.br
just have
vídeos,
to
no YouTube
access
você vai ver todos os
IX.br
vídeos.
videos and on YouTube, and you'll find it
Então,
there.
eu quero
I'd
chamar,
like to
lembrando, né,
call,
pessoal que está
well,
aqui,
just to
como
remind
o
you,
pessoal foi
those of you
chegando
here, since
depois da
people
abertura do
arrived
evento,
after the
o
opening of our
almoço
event, our lunch
é servido aqui, vocês estão
will
convidados
be
a
served
conosco
here.
no
You're
propósito
invited to have
do
lunch
INCBR,
with
do evento,
us.
dos nossos
We
patrocinadores,
invite you
do
all, well,
IX.br.
IX.br,
O almoço vai ser aqui
IX.br,
no
etc.
primeiro
And
andar, é só descer um lance de
it's
escada,
going to be on the first floor.
mas
Just
depois eu reforço um pouco como vai ser a
verified,
logística. Na hora
and
que vocês
then
saírem
I
da sala,
will
as
reinforce the
meninas vão
part of
entregar para
logistics
vocês
when
um
you leave the room.
voucherzinho e
The
elas vão
girls are
mostrar
going
para
to
vocês
give you
como
a
que
little
devolver esse voucherzinho
voucher And you have to give the voucher to control the hotel for the organization of the event. That's free. It's included in the event. You're invited to stay with us, and you're also invited at the end of the day to stay for our beer gear and care to talk, do networking, chat with us and our sponsors. Well, I'm going to take the opportunity, but in the last presentation ended 2 minutes early. I am making these announcements. I'd like to ask the IX.br people, the audience, to stand up so that everybody knows who are the IX.br people so that you can talk over lunch. Roberto, Rodrigo, Daniel, Anderson, Thiago, whoever is there, IX.br, not to applaud. You can, yes, you can clap, sure.
Não senta não, cadê? Quem mais está aí? Cadê o Galvão? Galvão fugiu? Ó.
Who else is there?
Aqui na
Galvão?
frente a gente tem o Anderson, o Thiago.
We have Anderson, Thiago, Lucas,
da equipe de cursos,
from
treinamentos.
course,
A gente
training
o
team.
Rodrigo, o
We have
Daniel.
Rodrigo, Daniel.
O óculos está ajudando. Oi?
Well, who else is there?
Fabiano, que são
Fabiano.
o Rodrigo, Fabiano na ativação
Rodrigo,
do
Fabiano,
Daniel
enabling
e o
XBR, OpenCDN as well, Gilberto.
de conhecer ele,
You have the opportunity of knowing them.
do Nick
In
BR, gente. Tem
plus SEG, we have Julio, Galvão,
provavelmente batendo papo com alguém
probably
aí.
chatting with somebody there.
Então, sem mais delongas, deu o horário
Without
agora.
further ado, it's time now. I'm going to call Milton Kashiwakura. He's our director. He made the opening of our event. Where's Milton? He's going to talk about our quality measurement program and on. He's going to talk about us.
O Milton, que é ele que separa a gente do horário do almoço. Né?
Remind Milton that he is the one who's between us and lunch.
Então, bem, agora aqui é uma apresentação, né,
So this is a
outra área que a
presentation
gente tem,
of another
que é
area
a
that
área
we
de
have,
medições aí.
which
Essa
is of
área
measurement.
aí, ela
This
pra
area,
conhecer um pouco melhor,
you should know it a bit
ferramenta chamada
better.
Cimete, tá?
It's a tool called CINMET.
Então, o que esse medidor aí se propõe a
What
fazer,
does
né? Quer dizer
this
que
meter propose to do?
ela se propõe
It proposes
medir, vamos
to
dizer assim, ajudar
measuring
o usuário final
or
aí a medir
helping the end
o que
user
ele
to
está
measure
recebendo lá na sua
what
casa,
it
né?
is
Então ele fica
receiving
medindo
at home. So it
banda, fica
measures
medindo latência,
bandwidth,
jitter, perda de pacote, né?
jitter, loss of
E
packages,
vamos dizer assim, né? Quer dizer que tudo isso é
latency, and all of this is for us to know what
na
is going
internet.
on with the internet and all the data somehow, whenever possible, it's geo-referenced. So we have this overview as to the quality here in Brazil. So our focus here has always been Brazil. And we started with this project a long time ago because the meters that we had the time, they did not present coherent data with what we had here in Brazil because, well, simply because the measurement servers were overseas, and for you overseas to measure bandwidth, it did not work.
Therefore, we have organized this project and we are helping providers to have a better perspective as well as we to really understand what the matter is in Brazil.
Essa infraestrutura do CIMET aí, ela tem.
CIMET infrastructure today has got the CIMET indicators, also the server, and AS portal. I'm gonna go into details about each one of them. Let's start by the meters, CIMET meters. We have web CIMET meter, Android, iOS, Windows, Linux, and we also have the same meter which is embarked on routers, smaller infrastructures. So the meter is embarked on OpenWRT, which is operational system for many other systems, and CIMET box can just be deployed at those CPSs, which allow to change their operational system to OpenWRT and some other systems such as Linux, GitHub. To the public sector, we developed a meter which can be widely used in education, thanks to a partnership that we have with the Ministry of Culture and Education. And meters can also be applied in the health sector, but meters for education and health, they measure it periodically. The type of measurement is different than the meter which is used to end consumers. End consumers, they use instantaneous CIMET meters, and for education and health, that is done differently. In education, I guess we have a total of 70,000 schools being measured, and half of them are being measured by the CIMET platform. Similarly, we are doing that in health.
Em algumas licitações aí que o MEC está fazendo, né?
Some hearings that the Ministry of Health, of Education, I mean, is taking part, they demand that CIMET should be embarked in their systems, especially if we are talking about schools and universities. How about server? CIMET for servers. We started our project just with the CIMET servers in the IXPs, and meters that were in the traffic point in the IXP, they would be placed on a 14026 autonomous system, which is connected to IX.br. And throughout that autonomous system, all participants in the IXP, they may perform measurements with this sort of provider and meter. Few years ago, several providers have required to have available the so-called CIMET meter at the provider structure, the one you see in orange. In orange, we have a CIMET server that can be used in the provider structure, and for that, it's just a matter of having a virtual machine. In that virtual machine, we are able to install a software, and we may manage the whole structure. Today, we have a number of platforms which are fully automated, and we are able to scale that up. If all Brazilian providers would like to have a CIMET server, it's just a matter of making this virtual machine available, and we'll be able to install the server, and measurements will be
para aqueles usuários que
done for users
utilizando
who are
os servidores CIMET daquele
using
provedor,
CMET
tá?
server from
Então,
that specific provider.
Com isso daí, né, a gente chega próximo do que os provedores querem, né?
With that, we are very close to what providers are
meçam
looking for, which is
a qualidade
to measure
no
the
servidor que
quality
esteja dentro
and
da
the
rede deles.
server that is
Quer dizer,
within their own
a gente
network.
fica se perguntando, né? Mas isso
And then
não
we
é
keep
internet,
asking
né? Porque isso aí
ourselves,
só está medindo só a
but that's not
infraestrutura do
internet,
provedor.
it's just measuring
Então, o que
providers'
a gente fez
infrastructure.
aí, né, pessoal? A gente fez naquele instalado junto com os servidores CIMET.
Together with the
A gente tem
CMET
servidor que a gente chama
servers, we have another
iOS,
one
né?
which we
E a
have
gente
named
complementa essa
iOS server,
informação,
and we
né?
add up to
Fazendo a
that
medição a partir
information,
desse ponto em que está o
measuring
servidor
it
CIMET,
from CMET server.
Contra as infraestruturas que
We
estão
measure
sob
it
a
against
tá?
infrastructures
E
which
também
are available at
naquele
IXPs,
servidor
as
que é
well
do
as the
público, lá, que
server,
está no
the public
sistema
server
autônomo do IX.br, que é
in
o
the
22.4.8,
IX.br
tá?
autonomous
Então,
system
com isso,
24
a gente tem uma visão de
5
de como é que está esse
58.
provedor aí em relação à internet. Quer dizer,
And then we can have an idea about the
medições,
quality of the
CIMET sendo
provider.
feitas
I
dentro da
mean,
rede do provedor.
CMET measurements are being done
O
within
dono
the
do carro
provider's
mostrar essas
network.
medições
And if the
parciais lá,
provider cannot show those
mas
measures to their
tranquilo.
users, they say, well, that's within my
Essa
network,
parte aí,
that's
né,
fine.
pessoal, que a
And
gente
this other
faz as
bit
medições,
where
o
we have
usuário final não
measurements
consegue
and
enxergar. Quer dizer,
user
o
is
usuário
not
final
able
só
to
vai
see
conseguir
it.
fazer essas
They will
medições
just
aí
be
se ele
able
selecionar,
to follow
se
measurements
ele
if they
selecionar a
select
opção de escolha do servidor CIMET
the
em outras
CMET
localidades,
server
ok?
options at
Então, com isso,
other sites.
o usuário final ele consegue ter
So
essas
when the
medições
users,
desde que
they
ele
are
faça
able
essa
to get
escolha,
all
mas
these measurements as long as
prioritariamente
they
vai ser
go
feito
for this
naquele
choice. But as a
servidor de medições que está
priority,
dentro da rede do provedor.
the measurement
Agora, essa
server
informação
will
aí,
be
a
within the
gente
provider system.
acaba, né, disponibilizando essas
We
informações
make
aí, né,
information
que a
available,
gente chama que não são volumétricas, né,
which are not
tá?
volumetric.
Através do nosso portal. Ok? Então,
That
todas
can
essas
be done
medições aí que a
throughout
gente
our
está
portal.
fazendo, né,
All
a
sort
gente não
of
torna público,
measurements, they do not
ok,
become a
pessoal?
public,
Mas só que a gente
but
comunica através do
we
portal da AS
communicate
o que está
throughout
acontecendo
the AS
dentro
portal
da rede
what
deles, né?
is
Então,
taking
a
place
gente
in their
indica
network.
lá como é que está, vamos dizer assim, a conexão com o IX.br.
So we tell about
A ideia
IX.br
é que
connection
quando a gente
type.
tiver
And
esse
if
sistema
we
aí, em
have
todos os
a
participantes,
system
a
like
gente
that,
consiga
we'll be able to
fazer a comunicação de como está ao alcance
turn
do
that
sistema autônomo em
communication
relação a
to
todos
a
os outros
reach
sistemas
of
autônomos
their
participantes.
autonomous system
Então,
in
com isso,
relation
você
to
tem uma
all other
informação muito mais
participant
rica
autonomous
do que está
systems.
acontecendo
Like
dentro da
that,
sua rede.
you are able
E
to
essa
share
informação só
a
vai
very
para
significant and
o
rich
provedor,
information,
ok?
which
Não
will
é
be
tornado
available
público.
just to the provider.
Mas
It's
essa daí é
not
a maneira
made
que a gente está
public, but
visualizando
that's the
como é
way
que a gente
as
vai
we
conseguir melhorar a
see how
qualidade da
we'll be
rede
able
dos
to improve
provedores,
providers'
ok?
network
Através do sistema de
quality
medições
via
no
a
qual a
measurement
gente consiga
system
interar
in
com
which we are able to
sistemas
interact
autônomos, né?
to
De tal
autonomous
maneira que
systems in
essas
such a
informações
way
ajudem
that
aquele sistema
information
autônomo lá para
will help
poder
that
fazer
autonomous
uma engenharia de
system
rede
to
melhor,
be able
tá
to
ok?
perform a
Então,
better
é isso que a
engineering.
gente está fazendo, tá? Isso aqui é o portal da
Number
AS,
3,
né? A gente
AS
está em
portal.
desenvolvimento, né?
It's under
Mas isso
development.
daqui já é, vamos dizer assim, o que está sendo mostrado.
But here you can have an idea. We are still refining a little bit the AS portal to allow that collected information can be better presented to our providers. So that's exactly what we are doing via this portal. And the idea is that more and more we'll be able to enrich AS portal with loads of information. More measurements are being taken and implemented. For example, what is under test is WPCP38, APCP38.
Aquele sistema autônomo está fazendo filtragem.
Autonomous system is filtering in a way that whatever takes out of their network can just be
que de fato deveria sair da rede dele, tá? E não
just what is supposed to be
qualquer IP espufado, quer dizer, que então
and not any spoofing. If that's not a spoofing IP, we are gonna, tell about the measurements. That's under test. We are gonna make that available throughout our AS portal to say, well, you are applying filter or you are not applying the filter in relation to best practices of ABCP38. Fine. Here we have a table which lists all sorts of measurements made via CMET. All users that made their measurements, all of them are available at AS portal. Here you can also grab information about your server, how are servers doing in your own network. And with that, you're going to have contact information about servers in the network. And to summarize,
os provedores, os dados são disponibilizados através do portal da
providers, data is available throughout AS portal.
Você instalando
But if you install
o servidor dentro da rede do provedor,
the server within the provider network, which is represented there in orange, you make available a server so your users can perform a band test in opposition to the server in orange. And together with that server, there is another software which measures against IX and servers that are in the IX piece.
Assim como também
as well as
teste de disponibilidade
availability test is carried out,
essas infraestruturas, servidores que estão nos
including all the IX infrastructures and the one which is present in São Paulo and which is public. Anyone can perform measurements throughout that server based in São Paulo. And last but not least, we have meters which become available to the general public. Some insights. What is taking place in Fortaleza? What is the current scenario? Implementation of IPv6 in Fortaleza, which is quite still very low. 19% of CMET measurements, they show IPv6 tests. And that is growing year after year. The greatest increase took place back in 21, and more recently, 23 and 24. We see a slightly increase. Some actions should be taken as to IPv6, not only in Fortaleza, guys, all over the country. The number that we see globally
assim, dentro da média mundial,
where our IPv6 is within the global average, but yet that 19% is highly related to actions carried out by large carriers and organizations as they run their network mostly on IPv6, whereas small and medium providers are not doing it with a future impact. So we are trying to map as much as possible how to deal with that, so we'll be able to be more proactive as to IPv6 with small and medium-sized providers. With the large ones, the work has been done. IPv6 presence in Fortaleza. Location-wise, we have referenced measurements which can let us know where IPv6 is in green and where there is no IPv6 in red. There are regions where the IPv6 is not present yet. Another piece of information, a software which was developed applying some concepts of AI
através das medições,
the measurements, we can tell if that is a fiber or satellite measurement.
O que mostra aqui, né, que o que está em verde, né?
In green,
ele mostra a presença de fibra ótica.
We see optical fiber presence, and in red doesn't mean it's not. But using such a methodology, it cannot be very conclusive if we are talking about fiber or not.
Esse mapa. Aqui a utilização do que está sendo feito, né, em termos de medições.
What have they done in terms of measures? CMAT and their choice process will have to switch the choice of a measure server.
Tirando aquele caso lá, né?
Apart from that case, with the exception of servers and providers from São Paulo,
os outros servidores, né, quer dizer,
all other servers which are present all over the state,
servidores estão nos pontos de tráfego desses estados aí. Então, é o que mostra esse gráfico aí, tá? Então,
this is what we can tell by this chart. We have a certain number of measures or measurements.
Aqui, né, pessoal?
I'm trying to use the laser pointer. No, it's not working. So we have measurements being done in Fortaleza region, but most of them are done in São Paulo, probably because of their software of choice.
Como que ele é feito por escolha de BGP, tá? Quer dizer que se o BGP tiver...
If BGP has the same metrics.
O que ocorre é que fica na sorte, tá, pessoal? E acaba muitas vezes aí acaba escolhendo outras localidades, tá, ok? Então, que se você...
It's a matter of luck, as they might end up choosing other sites. If you have the same S-patch to one or another, the decision will not be certain. You are going to run into some sort of uncertainty. If you have a more specific prefix, if you need a more specific prefix, in that case, also we are running into some level of uncertainties.
Com essas informações, a gente está trabalhando.
Now, with the information, we are dealing with a
além de ver essa parte do BGP,
choice of methodology, where in addition to BGP, we also have to understand the latency rates, which will help us to choose the closest server in terms of latency. What is new? Our team is preparing a new challenge. I don't know if you know, we had an award last year for IPv6, and this year we want to challenge you about best operational practices, BCPs.
Para poder incentivar as boas práticas operacionais.
CMET is a way to motivate best institutional practices. And by the end of the year, during the Infrastructure Week, we are going to award those
digamos, praticando as melhores práticas
are practicing the best practices.
O que o manners, o kindness e o
we want to incentivize what manners, kindness, and TOP recommends. Edition 2024 will take into account IPv6 implementation, also the recursive DNS server. Earlier this morning, Gilberto, during his talk, he addressed recursive OpenDNS or Open Recursive DNS, where you have that recursive server to our customer and you let it open to the internet as a whole. The idea is that this specific DNS could be deployed just by their IPs within their own network, and not to let it open to all, to everyone. So in this edition, we are going to test the recursive DNS, and thanks to CMET, we are able to understand what those metrics are, who are the recursive DNS servers, and with that information in mind, we'll be able to perform a number of tests to understand if that is open, outsourced or not. And during that edition, we are going to award those, of course, who are not open to the web. How about spoofed packages? We have developed a very simple test where if we want to know if spoofed IPs, they leave the user's network or not. If we are able to filter those spoofed packages via CMET meter, we'll be able to conduct a number of tests that will let us know if we are doing or not filtering as expected. Filtering IPs, and by that I mean IPs that should not leave their network. So we may switch IP address, and if you switch that within the provider network, a test will be conducted to understand if there is a filter deployment from your client to the end server. And by doing such a test, we'll be able to learn if there is a filter presence or not. Another test will be carried out to understand if the filter is getting out of the network from CMET externally. Two pieces of information will be achieved here if you are doing that within your own network, inside out or not.
A gente vai pontuar, né?
If the filter is in out, we will score AS with the best indicators. During this period of time, they will be awarded in this edition. And to be part of this contest, you should have an account at PAS, and also you should have a CMET server within your network. If you need any further information about the award criteria, just stay tuned for this coming edition. Okay? Fair enough. I guess we still have 2 minutes left for your questions. Let's try to be punctual because lunch will come next. If there are any questions, we may open briefly for them.
Bom dia, né? Meu nome é Anderson.
Hello there, good morning.
Que eu acho que pode até meio que
I have a
do
question that might
Mas
not
seria
be
assim,
totally within the topic, but anyhow, I will contract a new provider to the company to which I deliver some service, and I have to know what is their level of
não atende.
best practices, how much they comply or they do not comply to BPs, I mean. So you want to know if they are doing better or worse than your competitor, is that right? Okay, so the idea is not to make available competitors' information to others or to the autonomous system, but at least to make available at least an average out of all measurements conducted in that region. We are gonna make available the average. No, I'm not talking about a comparison, but if that company has reached a good level, they would get maybe a seal which would allow me to identify that that company is within the expected requirements. Yes, actually, we have thought about designing a seal of service or a kind of certificate, sort of speaking. But you developers and operators, you know that if you had a good network installation for a certain region, and then your sales team ends up selling quite a lot, the quality of that region will downsize. What is supposed to be good today, it might not be so good tomorrow. So a quality stamp or a quality seal, as you may call it, the guy is level A, B, C, but quality is kind of dynamic. The quality of internet is very dynamic. How can we then, design or offer a quality, a stamp of quality? Because as I said, what is supposed to be good today might be bad tomorrow or vice versa. Therefore, it's very difficult to give any sort of quality stamp to guarantee that the network of that customer is fine or not. And the same apply to large carriers. You may have one region which is not doing so well, and you cannot certify that server is 100% in compliance to all matters, because they might might be with some and might not be with some others. So we decided that, having this certificate of quality in like a seal or a stamp was not a good idea. We will identify our servers throughout the AS portal. It's not up to us to rank them, and we use those tools to end users as we want to know if the quality of that provider is as we would expect it or not. If you have a weak network, you want to use a quality meter all the time. You might not be, the system might not be performing well, so you want to keep on measuring. But if you are dealing with a stable network, you measure, now and then, and there you go. You have to feel happy about it because your user is glad as well. And if we have that average available and conveyed to the sector, everyone will know what is the average of that region where you are working. Of course, that that may be driving upwards where more bandwidth will be contracted. You have a certain bandwidth, you are doing fine, or you are running higher or lower. If you are doing running lower, you have to contract more bandwidth. But ideally, our goal is to motivate users to acquire more bands to cope with their needs. I don't know if I have answered your question or not, but I believe so. Okay? Well, now is lunchtime. We have no more time. Moreiras, would you like to close this session before we break for lunch, please? Thank you, Milton. So we are closing the morning session. And let me remind you, let's remind those who have joined us remotely via YouTube or Facebook. We are going to be back at 2 p.m. And the YouTube link is different from the Facebook one. So search for Forum IX.br/Fortaleza 2024, and the afternoon streaming link will be available to your information over there. For those of you who are here on site, lunch will be served on the first floor. And we fully recommend you do not leave anything in the premises. Please take your personal belongings with you, or maybe you can, store them in the clock room. Those who have joined us remotely don't have to worry about leaving or not leaving your personal belongings, right? Receptionists are just, outside, and a voucher will be given to you, which will allow you to have a free lunch. Don't rush, we have enough vouchers and enough food to everyone. Okay, enjoy your lunch. This session is over and I see you soon. Enjoy. And those who are going to have lunch at your own office, see you soon. Bye.